Well, hello there. Hi, and welcome to Cannabis Chat for Monday. It's Cannabinoid Medicine Monday show theme that we do here. Hi, everybody. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media, and I'm joined every Monday on our cannabinoid medicine themed show that we call Cannabis Chat by Alissa Merrill from flowerandtonic.com. And Alissa has a friend with her. Alissa, why don't you tell us who you're with?
I am with Nikki Lawley, who we introduced a few weeks ago.
You're live, guys. Hello?
Yes.
Oh, I
And,
didn't hear him.
no, she's been an advocate in the industry for a while. So, we're using some of our connections in the science world and collaborating to help get the message out. Because it seems like, we've got to direct to some of these experts, and you're doing a great job of that. And I feel like it's all kind of come together with a lot of the guests on your show. So I think we should keep it up. So we will be highlighting their experience, as we move forward.
And we have a pretty good lineup today too, don't we? We've got Amy Berliner. She is the CEO of Aegis Technologies, I believe, Aegis Biotechnologies out of San Diego. And we also have an Irish gentleman. We're going to be talking with Martin Condon, and we're also going to be talking with the one and only green nurse herself, Sherri Tutkis. That'll be coming up in about 90 minutes or so. But I know you have Nikki there. What do you guys, when you guys get together, what are some of the things that you are trying to accomplish through the network that you both have?
Medicine, right? And like
cannabis is my medicine, and Alissa has a lot of great connections, and as do I, and we're just trying to see the overlap and how we can help each other.
There you go.
Within the industry, there are a lot of people who perceive it very differently. It is fun, it's recreational, and it can be that, but it's also for people who depend on it for movement disorders or for brain injury or for to reduce pain if they're coming off of opioid medicine. So those patients, I saw them getting ripped off, and I saw them struggling to find the right products. And then, I also think, to overlook the impact that the physician has in recommending or even just being okay with these medications. It's important. Like, I think we all want it to, at least our doctors, to not think we're doing something bad. So maybe they can't recommend it. Maybe they can't ethically prescribe because we're just not there yet, but we could do better in giving them education. So I think we're so aligned in that way, like.
I'm a former pediatric nurse, and so there's a lot of stigma surrounding cannabis, especially not only for children, but adults as well. So trying to really promote awareness is a huge goal of mine.
Yeah,
that's why we have this show. And as I prepare for the show, I always seem to find interesting research that's being done. And one of the things about the research world, and you know that the U.S. House of Representatives last week actually approved a bill that was sponsored by a Republican, a prohibitionist Republican. I think his name is Andy Harris out of Maryland. And also Ed Blumenauer, who is the pro-cannabis representative from, I think he's Colorado. It's either Colorado, California, or Washington State. Those are the most progressive cannabis-friendly states out there. But it had to do with research, and it had to do with making researchers who want to study cannabis, allow them to actually study the cannabis in those legal states that's being sold. And, we know for years that the University of Mississippi is the only federally approved research area, and everybody recognizes that they don't have the best weed in the world. In fact, it's not comparable at all with what goes for both medicinal grade or even adult use recreational available in legal states. So, they're trying to give help to the researchers to actually get the right kind of research. So it's not just giving access to research, but also to have the right kind of research on the right products. And an interesting survey that came out today or within the last week. It's a Harris poll. And according to an online poll, 45% of adults in America have reduced or replaced their alcohol consumption with cannabis since the pandemic started. Does that statistic surprise either one of you?
No,
Not even a little.
the products are getting better. They complement each other in some cases.
For sure.
And the stigma is getting, absolutely, no, it doesn't surprise me.
Should tell you, it had, just so you know, it was an online poll. 1,895 adults, 21 over, responded. Interestingly enough, out of that 1,895 respondents, 772 had never tried cannabis. And sure enough, they said, this is cool. I feel more under control, or the different effects, as you know, between alcohol and cannabis are completely different.
For sure.
Okay.
I have so many thoughts. Yeah, like it is, and then at the same time, it is still. I think the medicinal. It's hard. The medicinal market is still, I think, struggling to find its right place because there are so many products that are.
No one really knows which lane to go in.
Yes, exactly.
There's either the medical lane or the rec lane, and for someone like myself, coming to Massachusetts is amazing because I have access as not a medical patient, but just as a consumer to your incredible products. We went to a dispensary yesterday. Forgive me.
Yes. Oh, yes. She's very excited. And no one's talking about this. Have you heard of Tikkun Olam?
Tikkun Olam. These guys.
Okay.
Like we need to know of them. Like this is from, you tell them.
So these guys are out of Israel and they make incredible flower and they actually have research behind it. Not sure if you can get a grasp of them, but
I see. Well, I want to know where you got these. What dispensary? Can you tell?
It was at Panacea.
Panacea. Well,
I see it.
Yeah, which is beautiful. I know, right? This is what I'm saying. Like everyone, there's no community. But yes, I mean, this was like a next level standard. She even introduced it to me. I started researching it. All the science-based.
they're very science-based.
Yeah, I was
And
impressed.
in California, they had the line and I had heard of them, but never really studied them. And then their name just keeps coming up and coming up. And then I saw a post on LinkedIn from Beth
Waterfly, Elevate.
From Elevate. And she mentioned that they were going to be in these dispensaries. And then I said to Alissa, I said, hey, is this anywhere near where we're staying? And she said, yeah, it's 20 minutes away. So boom, she got a new connect and got to see a new dispensary that she wasn't familiar with. And I got my Tikkun Olam flower.
Yeah.
It is amazing.
Now, Nikki, make sure you consume every single piece of that, every single little milligram, because we don't want you crossing state borders now, going back to your state, right?
Absolutely.
I won't tell if you won't tell. One of the things that I also found, guys, and I do want to get into this a little bit more when we start going through our guests and stuff. You know, the substance abuse community has been studying cannabis for years. Now, we talked a little bit about the University of Mississippi and their stuff really isn't worth it, but it is what it is. It's what was available. It's what they've studied. And this is the University of Bath. Now, I think the University of Bath is in the UK for sure. And I don't know if it's Ireland or Great Britain or Scotland, but I know that our guy Martin will know where the University of Bath is. But they really talked about how over the last 50 years, the THC percentages have gone way up in the cannabis. And we know that. That's not something we don't know. But of course, what do you think the next conclusion of that is? I'm going to throw that out both to you. What do you think that the conclusion of the study that they found that, of course, there's more active percentage of THC in the cannabis of today than was there in the 70s. What do you think the conclusion was by another substance abuse group that was studying this?
They're probably poo-pooing it. They're probably saying it's a bad thing and it's causing damage and causing more addiction and creating bigger problems because it's so much more potent. And that is 100%, in my personal opinion, false. I don't know what the 60s and 70s pot was because I didn't know what it was. But I can honestly say that cannabis is medicine. I genuinely believe you need both THC and CBD. And I feel that THC is viewed as a dirty word, and it's really not. It's what helps me the most, and it's what allows me to focus. Jimmy, I couldn't even be talking to you if I hadn't medicated before the show. So the difference is really life altering.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion.
Right. So it basically says it's become substantially stronger, carrying an increased risk of harm. That's what the headline said. Now, if it said increased risk of efficiency or effectiveness, right, that wouldn't have been so bad. But the headline is increased risk of harm. And this is what bothers me about headline writers. They do their jobs because they get the attention. But this is what bothers me when you have a study like this, and basically it said, sure, you know, THC concentrations have increased by 14% from 1970 to 2017. I can attest to that, okay? Since I think I've been on record as saying 1971 was the first year that I actually tasted cannabis at age 14. And of course now it is more impactful, but guess what? You don't have to smoke the whole bag to get high. You only need 3 or 4 hits. That's the point, isn't it?
What are they testing? It depends also what they're testing. Is it natural growing hemp? Is it natural THC? Is it in dispensaries? Of course, it's going to be bred stronger. I mean, is it talking about the sampling they're taking? Like, you know, when they say it's grown and when it's stronger today, of course, is it straight? I don't know. There's like a million variations to that. Like these questions are all so vague that, you know, there's synthetic. So of course, that's so much more potent. Like, I don't know. Some of these people were reporting don't even know the questions that they're asking, you know. But I have to say, I think, Jimmy, what you were kind of getting at before with the I think there's like a middle ground for clinical trials, and I think we're like there. Like I'm so tired of everyone being like, well, Israel got all the money, all the studies were done to prove, you know, harm, and yes, great, that's all true, but who cares? It's all done. Let's just take all of that information, take the most respectful people that we have who can look at it and pick it apart and have that bulletproof story, because so far, I just think the way the story has been told is not resonating with physicians and healthcare professionals. So I really think like Australia and New Zealand, like they're just setting a new precedent. It doesn't have to be FDA approved to be, I don't know, I think we have a new lane kind of opportunity. Like when you were asking about the UK studies, kind of getting back to where you started, my full circle.
Right.
Yeah, like I think that's close. I don't know. See, I think you said 5 years off. I think that's closer. I think the right people putting together the right bulletproof story that kind of starts from the beginning will, I don't know, potentially hitch things up.
Right. And then, of course, I go to another report on research, and the Journal of the BMJ Open, and this conclusion, and this was a September 2020, attitudes towards cannabis products for medicinal use need to change with much greater appropriate use of such products to help alleviate patients' pain, suggests research published in the Journal of BMJ Open. And of course, there's a lot of research being done in the UK. And that's why I'm kind of intrigued to talk with the gentleman, Martin, from Ireland, when we get to him in about 45 minutes or so, because I really want to learn what's going on in Ireland, in Scotland, in England, and what are the attitudes there? What's the research like? It does seem that there is a movement. I don't know if it's as advanced as what we have already here in the States, but it's certainly going in that direction of more acceptance.
Yeah, it's huge everywhere, and it's a little scary because everyone's researching the same stuff. Like there are a lot of even the top professionals, and I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of It's all startups, so we don't really have like a king. Who would you say is like the right now in this industry? Who do you think is like the real, top of the, I don't know, top industry? Like, who sets the highest standard of like bigger industries, companies?
In the cannabis world?
Yeah.
I would think that it's the multi-state operators and companies in Canada that have gone public and have been riding the legal wave up there. I'm just throwing Aurora, Canopy Growth, Tilray. These are all the biggies that are out there. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah. So those are just are people going to, are those going to, I don't know. Yeah, I'm just fascinated to see how this industry is going to go. It's going to turn like a hard break off to more pharmaceutical. Are those going to be pharmaceutical? There's so many opportunities with the industry. It's overwhelming. Because I see things, where I see things is it's like going into hospitals, and then they're also, but most of the industry is talking about dabs. So it's like, I don't know, forget it. Deep conversation we were having earlier, apologies.
No, there's no apologies necessary. It's a talk show. We get to talk about whatever we want. And again, this was, it was researchers from the Imperial College of London, London School of Economics, the Drug Science Institute, and of course, the UK they feel that they are lagging behind other countries in research. And you brought up Israel. Israel seems to be leading the league in research since the 60s on this subject. And now they're finally coming around. Actually, I believe they're going to make it legal for adult use on a recreational basis as well.
They even had products, like my mom brought back products from fall my dad had. Like their topicals are just different. Like, they have the next level over the counter, like topical products that are just, they work, that we don't have here. And it's just so hard to understand that, just simple like burn medications. We just don't have those alternatives when we go to our local pharmacies. So I think that we should look to them and copy them in every way. And look, we are right now, finally in Massachusetts.
Okay, and I love that Nikki made the trip from that upstate New York all the way to Massachusetts just to hang out with you and also do a little shopping along the way for your medicine, right, Nikki?
Exactly. I really, I've never been to Massachusetts, so this has been a very learning and cultural experience.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, needless to say, I'm pretty proud of my home state and have been for a long time. I've been very fortunate. I've never had to leave New England and have had a long broadcast career in the New England area, and I guess I'm continuing it now. But speaking of which, as I check the clock, you know what time it is. We're getting closer and closer to that 4:20 time, and that 4:20 time, of course, all started in San Rafael, California with the Waldos. A bunch of high school kids used to meet outside the school at 4:20, the Louis Pasteur statue that was across the street from San Rafael High School, until law enforcement caught on. Remember, this was 1971. And of course, they used that code 420 to describe public consumption of cannabis going on the corner of, take your pick, Main and Vine Street or whatever. Then the cannabis culture started kicking in. Before you know it, we had April 20th as the holiday for cannabis, and 4:20 seems to be the time when most people at the end of the day decide to perhaps partake in their favorite substance, if you will. In my day, growing up in the greater Boston area, we had a song written by Jonathan Edwards. It was called Shanty. And every show that we do live, we allow Jonathan Edwards to share that song with you, the audience, in addition to celebrating the Waldos who created the 420 celebration. So we're going to take a break here, but when we come back on the other side, we'll talk with Amy Berliner from Aegis Biotechnologies. Don't go away. We'll have more of Cannabis Chat after this.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 1900. I've forgotten. we had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just, like every other night, just going to lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. You're on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. Nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. I'm gonna sit down in my rented car, I'm gonna jam it into drive. Gonna head on out and play at WSCA with Sean, I'm glad I'm alive. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Every night and day, we're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
Take your Zoom call podcasts or webinars to a whole new level.
Nurse Mark and the Green Nurse Podcast. We are here.
That's right. PCM can animate your logo, add eye-catching full-screen graphics, and lower third identifying motion graphics. Look like the network. Act like the network.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Welcome back to Cannabis Chat for a Monday afternoon. I'm Jimmy Young with Pro Cannabis Media. I'm in the Pro Cannabis Media studios, and I'm joined by Alissa Merrill from flowerandtonic.com, along with a friend, Nikki Lawley. He's also with Alissa today, and we are awaiting the arrival of Amy Berliner, who is the CEO of Aegis Biotechnologies out of California. And she has quite a background in business. And one of the things I talk about a lot, and Alissa, you know this as well, I am amazed at how many women get into the cannabis industry in some capacity or another. It definitely is an opportunity for women to be part of a board and make the calls that businesses make all the time. Because for many, many years, decades, men have dictated most companies. And I'm not quite sure that's worked out so well. Let's just say, I think it's unique, but Alissa, as someone who's a founder of a company, I mean, you've been around. You can handle this in your business because you are comfortable and you are passionate about it. And I don't know how many others out there can understand how important having a passion for what you do is. You agree that you're pretty passionate about what you do because you're providing a service for the public, right?
I do, but honestly, if I had to do it again, would I ever choose to start a business in a startup space? No, like I just don't. I think I'm just this. I am well stand behind strong women. I love to work with women. I also love to work with men. I don't really care if they're smart. It goes, but I just think there's a lot of it's been a challenging industry. I want to stay naive enough. I have young children and I'm choosing to stay naive enough that I can still believe in the end that the good guy's winning, so that's a little, I'm gonna choose to stick there as long as I can right now. So I'd probably know less if I could, but it's been a great experience for sure. But I'd love to hear more about, our new guest. If Jimmy, if you want to make the introduction.
Yep, that's what I could do because Amy Berliner is here. Hello, Amy. Welcome to the show.
Hi, I joined you guys. Thank you.
Good. There we go. I'm glad we're good. I never know how good the connection is till we start talking and if I can hear this or not. Let's just say you are the founder and CEO of Aegis Biotechnologies, correct? Tell us a little bit about your company.
Yes.
And what does cannabis have to do with your company?
Sure. Well, I kind of have to give you a preface to Aegis and its existence because, it was not by default, by organic way that I came into cannabis. I had been a C-suite executive for 2 decades and doing so exceptionally well, and ended up leaving my corporate job. And a few months later, found out that I had skin cancer. And it really pivoted my life. It was at a time in the economy when people really weren't looking for senior executives in their companies. And so it really threw me into the trench of really finding ways for myself to heal and to recover. And I like to call it recover because at the core of it, it's our immune systems, right, that we need to boost. But I had to go back into education. And really, I prided myself on being a vegetarian my whole life. I was very active, and yet I lived a very stressful life. I loved sugar. I loved the sun, and I had a boss that chain smoked near me. So it was like a petri dish of infection waiting to happen, right? But, I call that cancer experience really a moment of opportunity that segued at me into what I do today. I went back through school. I had a millennial come to me, and I love millennials, by the way. I love their energy. We got to educate. This guy says to me, Amy, why wouldn't you consider cannabis? And then he said weed and marijuana and all these different words all at me. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You don't know who I am. Like, clearly I'm going to school you, because I came from somewhat of an alternative mindset. My mother being traditional, my father being alternative, and meant I was going to be Switzerland in the middle. So I call myself the bridge, if you will. But so I was like this Christian that was going to convert someone to my ideology. And I went home, and immediately I found a federal patent on a cannabinoid. And I said, there it is. I walked it back, and everything what I do in my world in both research and technology is we reverse engineer things, right? We look at the core, we look for the opportunity to solve a problem. And when I looked at that and I said, there's a reason that there's an acknowledgement of value to these chemical compounds. And so I knew I wanted to work with a chemist to create a formulation for myself that I applied transdermally, and also took oral capsules because I had never smoked a day in my life. So I wasn't going to smoke something anecdotally. So went on a very concentrated level after I found all the science, looked at all the research, and I said, this needs to be at a level where we can remove stigma and replace it with science. And so I went through the Medical Cannabis Continuing Education Institute program. And then I followed it up with the Postgraduate Institute of Medicine, and got 6 months away from an ND in naturopathic medicine, and all the while working on building my company, and not really knowing at the time what that was going to look like. But I knew that as I journaled my own health experience, utilizing cannabis for the first time in my life, I had never smoked a cigarette. I was a perfect case study, if you will. And so I knew that I wanted to build a technology around being able to target preclinical observational data into meaningful research studies that which we would then use with our research team. So then I knew I needed to build a connection to the community, which was speaking the language of the science to those within traditional healthcare, but also being able to bridge both the alternative and traditional healthcare into a good fusion, because it's integrative, right? At the end of the day, patients are using things independent of a conversation with their physicians. And so we really want to be a part of that transparent bioinformatic data. So my partner and I created Aegis, and Aegis means shield in Greek, and we see ourselves as a shield from care to cure. Identified through the science, the technology, research, education, and then we're going to be monetizing that bioinformatic data and that user engagement to really establish the meaningful values of what research is really all about. I always say research is only research when we continue to evaluate and explore these compounds that show some value and give us an opportunity to identify those that don't. And to me, anything less than that is really negligent in research, because we're always provocative. We're always looking at the new evolution or iteration, right? So it became the birthing point and the impetus for me to use, I like to say, out of my frustration came innovation. And I get to bridge both alternative and traditional research therapies into one experience. So we've designed an application that's an mHealth telehealth preclinical data repository that is on the blockchain. And I do a lot in blockchain, so there's a whole different winded conversation, but and we'll leverage that data into meaningful ways, not only for us at Aegis as we work on pediatric and neurological and immunotherapies, but also treating things with over-the-counter therapies that we'll be able to take to market, but also behind-the-counter clinical and observational studies. So we really see ourselves as a fusion of every multidisciplinary approach to both alternative and traditional therapy, where we can bridge back the integrity. You know, I think people on both sides of the fence, you know, they look at alternative and traditional therapies as being left or right, or Democrat and Republican, and healthcare is a universal conversation. And patients are independent of that. They're demonstrating that by taking medical vacations, becoming their own researchers, exhausting traditional treatment, saying, what else can we do but become our own? And so we believe in being a part of that process and helping both natural, nutraceutical, and pharmaceuticals with our data, of which we're poised to hold by 2023 the largest amount of integrative health data worldwide, which is really exciting. So for us, we really feel like, you know, out of the frustration came something that was beautiful, as I like to see. And so that really became the impetus of Aegis Biotechnologies and our technology, Stream Health.
There you go. And data is king when it comes to
king. In
science.
research, absolutely.
That's right.
I told you so moments to people who don't believe it, because you've articulated it way better exactly, you know, the way people just don't quite understand. You know, it's so there's so much opportunity. And I think you're gathering existing data as well, correct? Like there's a great middle place, I think.
Well, and absolutely. I mean, we come at it from a multidisciplinary approach where we're educating a community of consumers and patients, but we will also be educating continuing education for clinicians and those within, aortic medicine or, any type of medicine. We believe in that fusion. And as we look at, how do we connect with users? And I know both sides of that. I've been on both the alternative side of healthcare and I've been on the traditional side of healthcare, both in the research side, but also the tech side. And so how do we bridge that meaningful value into an application where people feel safe? They feel that they can capture resources of information that are intelligent. They can connect with a community and really find value within what we're able to provide. And I think the expectation is beyond now. It is the global pace of where people are today, both at the scientific level of what they expect. Cancer discoveries, for example, how many more years until we come to clear with that? So we look at, and I'll give you a case in point. I was, and the reason why it's so passionate for me is that we have people suffering today in real time that are desperate to not wait 8 to 12 years for an FDA study to be cleared. And they don't have the opportunity to work through a placebo. So how do we mitigate those pain points? And the only way that we do that is be relevant with our value of not only educational resources, but the connectivity to be in an environment that's immutable, nearly unhackable, where they can feel safe, where you can be anonymized, where we can help you digest and marinate and then translate meaningful information, through AI and artificial intelligence and machine learning, that we can help be more predictive. I mean, prevention is prediction, right? If we can utilize the tools that we have today to be much more predictive, then this is where we can be more proactive in prevention. And I think this is where healthcare professionals are struggling because they want to pace the global market. They want to pace where the conversation is at the educational level, but they don't know where to go. And we're really that incubator, that integrative platform that fuses all of that, where we'll educate at the very raw organic level all the way through to the top level academic level, because it's so important that it's an integrative conversation. And we've siloed this for so long that patients and consumers have become distrustworthy for many reasons, whether it be alternative, it could be a snake oil to voodoo to shaman to CBD, right? That's inconsistent. We want to know those variables no differently than we look at the evolution of a product, pill, or prescription today, as I say, that is on the market that gets recalled every year. And so after FDA approval. So how do we find the balance of that? And we do that by working with natural nutraceutical pharmaceutical companies, but also those within healthcare to create that symbiotic relationship that says it's cohesive, where we can bridge back what real integrative healthcare should have been all along, where we don't continue to lose the bandwidth of patients for general practitioners and others.
Yes, 10 times over. Yes, I couldn't agree. And I just think the opportunity is there. 5 years ago now, I was working with a company that connected an EHR and Fitbit. And I just thought that has to be here now. And I sold it all the way to this big hospital group. And then the FDA declared it was no longer going to be something that, was overseen, which I understand, but I just feel like, well, can't someone be the authority on who tests the Fitbits to see which one's accurate? Like, it was strange to me that that middle, there's value in it. And we're not going to fit into the FDA standards with any of these things. And sometimes it's just about the right people evaluating them. So will you be using that type? Because I think,
we will be using an EMR, so they will have an electronic medical record. We will be able to, they will be able to hold all of their medical records in this one portal. So permissionable, anonymized, and a portion of our anonymized data, which is really exciting, I think, to the user, is that they get to be a part of it, is they get to contribute something that they could never report on before and validate. And I think that this is really meaningful, independent of the infrastructure. Just like blockchain. I tell people all the time, it's a new freeway, but a lot of people haven't heard about it. And if they have, they think it's the wrong freeway. And what we have to do is we have to vehicle and conduit people in a meaningful way to the conversation. And how we do that is by substantiating that with data. And even at a raw organic level, we're able to create that baseline that's so incredibly meaningful as we do formulations, as we work with other people to be able to pivot from some formularies that have been migrated away from the initial formulation due to whether it be I'm looking at my margins and I'm trying to appease an investor. And I always say, if you don't have the quality, you won't have the quantity. And that to me is where we've continued to see in healthcare the numbers deplete because the value has depleted. We have the most incredibly high cost value healthcare and yet the least effective to so many degrees, right? And so how do we bridge back the conversation with patients to where they can believe that we are for them, not against them? We are wanting to be a part of the process and not the problem. And so I think that takes us standing forward and saying in a progressive way, we have to be willing to be more patient-centric, user-centric, with a vehicle to conduit those within healthcare to feel safe enough to interoperate. And I think we recognize general practitioners today are seeing less and less patients. It's a proven statistical fact. That is their bread and butter with referral, RX, copay. It's a vehicle, right? And when we see that reduction of bandwidth because they've exhausted traditional treatment, how do we keep them a part of the carousel? And if we integrate ways to where there's still cross-pollination, which is so important in research, is being able to see that those can coexist, and we know they can, then we can actually understand even looking at chemotherapies and saying CBD is much more of an uptake enhancer than we once believed, and validating some of these things. So I think, it's a big conversation. It is a big task, and we are super excited because we've seen it at very different levels, and healthcare for so long has been disconjoined and lacks the communication to really in real time be responsive and most importantly proactive. People don't want to continue to hear that 20 years from now we're going to still be having this conversation about how to cure cancer. So the expectation is incredibly high when we have the most incredible high cost in healthcare. And yet people are going, well, I don't know if I trust your system. I don't know if I trust your science. I don't know if you trust your technology. And that's where Aegis Biotechnologies really circumvents in a turnkey way that facilitation.
There you go. And, one of the things we've talked about and with an integrative doctor here, you guys are in California, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So here on the other coast, on the East Coast, there is a doctor who's a cannabis expert here, Ryan Zachlin, and he's an integrative doctor. Integrative medicine is what he and I have had some pretty deep conversations. And one of the things that I've learned and have asked and talked to oncologists about and other doctors about, that in 1937, had we not prohibited cannabis, a substance that had been used medicinally for decades here in the United States. I think it's something like 5 million prescriptions were written in the 1920s for cannabis. Had we not taken that away from the endocannabinoid system that all mammals have, would we have seen a decrease in cancer and anxiety and depression? And of course, the doctor looked at me like I was brilliant. Right. It's just a basic thing I'm thinking about. It's like, wait a second, you had something that's helping you with your immune system, and now we take that away for generations, and because of racism and capitalism and money hungry barons out there named DuPont and Hearst, that's how this whole prohibition started. If we had just left it alone and let it grow like the plant it is, I wonder where we'd be now. What's your reaction when you hear that crazy theory by me?
Well, you're asking me this question, right, Jimmy?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, one, I think what a great case study we all were, right? And I reverse engineer everything. So I look back and I think, 100 years ago, what did the healthcare system look like? What does it look like today? And what is the number one thing that is competing with heart disease and cancer today in diagnoses? Autoimmune disease.
Autoimmune
So we've
disease.
seen
Right.
over the 100 years this escalation of celiac disease and all of these different things, fibromyalgia, and all these different things that we know are associated to the immune system. So when we've taken that thing out of dairy, we've taken things out of feedstock that were given to us. Even if you're a vegetarian and you drank milk, you still got it, or ate cheese. So this compound was, the transference was incredible, right? Because it boosted, and we know that scientifically it does boost immune system. So we recognize that it was a great, if you come from the science world, right, it was a great case study to be able to see what could we pull away and what could we re-inject. And I think the more that we see the GMO integration, we have to be much more aware of how to boost our immune systems, because it's at the core. I even look at the vaccines today, and I think if you're not boosting your immune system on your own, independent of a vaccine, then you're already deficient, right? Because we recognize you're just so susceptible to illnesses, and this is where we see the perpetual problem. So I think one, it was a great case study for those people who said, wonder what we could do with this, and let's see the iteration and evolution of that. And that's science, right? But there's always a casualty to that. And it's a casualty of cancer, which obviously we've all recognized. And so how many lives have been lost to that? And one of the toughest things to hear, and there's always two sides of thought to this, but I would much rather have a solid immune system and know that whatever I put synthetically integratively on top of that will be complementary versus so intrusive. And I think that this is where we have to re-empower people with their health and how they make and better formulate decisions based on science, not merely just an opinion. And I think that we get a lot of media influence. We get a lot of people that are narrating for political reasons. And I've been on both sides, Democrat and Republican, in a congressional advisory capacity. And I can only tell you that, for so long, they've tried to veer away from this conversation because of the stigma tied to it.
Right.
And I've said, here's the thing. If we had left, like you said, Jimmy, alone, this whole plant, this would not be the explosion revolution that we see today. It would probably be far less of even a conversation, because, it's a very complementary, it's not the cure-all, end-all, be-all, but it's a very complementary piece to the incredible interoperability of what happens when we fuse alternative and traditional healthcare together. And this is where we see incredible value, right? When we look at, research, we pull that together. So for me, that's incredibly important.
And you have a platform that can pull this together. Is that what your, the capabilities? Because I think I followed a similar, coming from a very conservative pharmaceutical background, the things that have been introduced, genetic data, and then the testing that physicians can do, because we don't have here a lot of alternative holistic doctors, so that I didn't know certain tests were offered because they can't be, because insurance doesn't cover them. So, there's just so many different opportunities and no way to learn. No way to learn how to find the right clinicians or the right testing. So is this more readily available right now in California, like integrating all these systems? Is that already there?
So we actually will be launching the first quarter of this year. So COVID kind of set us back a little bit, but there's going to be a COVID component to it, really, which is really exciting, because so many people are really wanting to make sure that the tests are valid, ensuring that they're working with the right laboratories. We've had a lot of people have several false positives and things like that. So we really want to make sure that people get the right information, because we're pulling all bioinformatic data. So we're working with labs, manufacturers, but also healthcare clinicians themselves to the academic institutions. So any different way that we can vehicle the fact that we are much more supportive to this immutable environment, this safe environment where we can house this data, and it's much more more integral. I think that it gives, again, a meaningful participation within our user, but also creates that use case that demonstrates proof positive, that there is value in some of this integrative data and how we culminate and put that together.
I mean, yeah, there's so much wasted information out there. Like it's not coming together, but when it's there. But I love what you're doing. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
very excited.
It's a labor of love. I'm not going to lie.
It sounds like a huge, huge undertaking, but I get it. Like there's such a need, and the technology's there, but people aren't working together, and FDA standards are not achievable financially, and a lot of the scientists don't know how to get out their name out there, so.
Well, and I just took an editorial board seat with the Journal of Cannabinoid Medicine, and prior to that, I was the first to create this first multidisciplinary approach to integrative healthcare when I created Canna Healthcare magazine. And in 5 publications alone, we had over 120,000 subscribers, of which I've shelved for now. But I really focused on really creating the scientific conversation from researcher to clinician, but then also the fusion of putting in a patient story, really sharing from a patient story level. So that's really a part of my technology, as well as patients being able to share their stories and telling others their experience. And I think that's huge, and we want to reward them for that because we think there's power in people's voices. And so it really, there's so much science that needs to come together, and being able to be on a peer-to-peer reviewed journal, to being able to help make sure that science gets educated through the clinicians. I mean, 3/4 of our subscription base were people from the healthcare space. I mean, that was organic. So, I mean, that said volumes to me when people go, Amy, you'll never make it work. It's not going to be received. And I got to tell you, it was the greatest launching pad, because first I had to fuse the education. I had to walk people to a science that they were unfamiliar with. And I can speak that language to them scientifically, but I can also speak in layman's terms to where, a grandma can understand. And I think that that's really important, is that from cradle to grave at educational levels, we're able to speak to that. And we've recognized those pain points to where we can really be a real-time problem solver. And that's what really excites me is being able to do that and help other companies do that. Help us help others. I mean, that's really what we're about, is that interoperability. So, for labs and manufacturers, and I mean, they're going to be evaluating these products with our application. And so there's value in our data being able to help these guys make sure that those formularies are right. There's a lot of Me Too guys in the cannabis space, and I know who you are.
You and I are going to be following this conversation, because I've got the pharmaceutical team to support. It's been hard to find the right products, but agreed. I mean, it's the messaging has not been right. And so doctors, though, I know I've spoken to many who are just ready. They see that kind of middle lane opportunity to try some of the products from Zalira, products that are close to being a pharmaceutical in the very near future. Why wait 4 years?
Well, it's a patient expectation. Let's be honest. It's why the numbers are the way they are. So the longer that we delay this ideology to a consumer market, the less and less relevant we become in healthcare. So if we really want to pace where a global market is, we have to be able to pace that conversation and be able to have receptive research that matters to them, to where we can be reactive, i.e. COVID. I mean, had we had real-time data, we wouldn't be this far in the hole, as some might say, right? So I leverage that argument as a touche, because that's really where it's at. I mean, we have to be able to leverage real-time data in a meaningful way.
Yes, no, I could not agree. I love this conversation. I love what you're doing. I'm so glad that we're connecting. I'm sad it took this long to find you, because it's a difficult industry to find people who are like not thinking you're a little crazy for seeing it this way, like still arguing it's pot with a lot of people. And
I got to tell you, when I first launched into this, I was so closeted. I told no one I was doing this, right? I think there were like 5 people on my hand that knew. And my husband was growing his hair out for me just in case I was going to do chemo or radiation or whatever he thought what might be my weapon. And I became this advocate, before I was this corporately critical mind to cannabis. And then when I saw the science, I was like, how could I ignore this fact? How could I ignore this truth? And scientifically, at a research level, it's ignorant to ignore that, even at a cost factor, because I've had many conversations with some huge institutions, and, the argument's always been, well, we search it at an anecdotal level because, of the cost factor, and today we have synthetic formulations coming out. I mean, I work with several clients, where we're formulating yeasts, and we're duplicating, cloning that type of compound in a meaningful way so we can circumvent some of these things. But the genetic really matters. And a lot of people don't recognize that the genetic of that cloned formulation is the base of its efficacy and continued momentum, or value, right? So, there's so many different challenges. And it took me going through that experience myself. I mean, I had broken my neck, had a spinal cord injury. I'd broken my neck horseback riding, broke C5 and C6. So I had major neuropathy on the left side that no pharmaceutical could help me with. I had muscle spasms that were so painful that opiates helped me zero, and I hated the way they made me feel. I got meningitis, and I had major migraines since then. So, I mean, I had so many different issues. And when I first started using cannabis, I was like, this is weird. Wow, I slept through the night for the first time. I've never slept through the night. I mean, I can hold a conversation, as you clearly can see, but I mean, I couldn't sleep through the night, and my mind would start thinking science or all these different things. And for the first time in my life, I mean, I'm 49, and for the first time in my life, I slept like a baby. I understood what REM sleep was. And the one thing the doctor always tells you is when you're sick is get good rest.
Right.
And that was a key part of it too, was being allowed within my body to say I was deficient for so long because of so many factors, right? That I was then really rejuvenating and calibrating my body back to a place where I could fight infection and I could, mitigate my tumor. I mean, it was incredible, the journey that it took me going through, and it was very closeted. But then when I saw the science and I saw what it did to my tumor, I was like, I'm sold, and it's not for everyone, but I think that people are owed the opportunity to make a choice. And if we educate them, if we give them meaningful data, people are going to make a good choice. And this is going to help direct pharmaceutical. This is going to help direct natural and nutraceutical products and formularies, because the buyer is no longer loyal to your brand. I mean, look at just Johnson & Johnson alone. They're over the counter, behind the counter, and it took a talcum powder to take them. And so people still use the product, right? I'm not saying anything negatively about it, but I mean, it took that experience. Why should we have to wait until manufacturers go through that experience when we could mitigate that point today? So.
Absolutely. Amy Berliner, what a story. Very impressed. And
no, I don't want to hang up. This is no.
And there's no way that I looked at you and thought you were the age that you shared with us, by the way. There's no way.
Thank you. You're really kind. You're really kind.
I try to be. And thank you for joining us on this Monday. And please don't be a stranger. I can't tell you how many times we've heard these anecdotal stories about how cannabis has saved people's lives or changed their lives. And you are living proof of that again. So again, thank you.
Thank you guys so incredibly much. And connect with me on LinkedIn if we're not connected. I always have intentional relationships. So I look forward to circling back with each of you. And thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, you bet. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. That's great. Amy Berliner from Aegis Biotechnologies. Yes, you can find her on LinkedIn. I did about 2 hours ago. We LinkedIn.
And you caught me on a free afternoon.
You responded. It was great. I didn't want to butcher the name of your company. Thank you so much again for joining us. We're going to have more of Cannabis Chat when we go over the pond, as they say. And we'll talk with Martin about all that coming up next on Cannabis Chat. Don't go away.
Getting into accounting actually started when I was younger. It's a funny story. My grandparents used to watch us every summer, me and my sister, And my grandfather owned stock in the company that he worked for, the electric company they'd worked for forever. And he retired, he would check that stock price every day. So it'd be something fun that I would do with them. We'd look at the newspaper, I'd check the stock price with them. And I think that's where my love of numbers came in. And it turns out that I didn't even realize this when I picked accounting as my major. My other grandfather, my father's father, was an accountant as well. He was much older when I knew him, so I didn't realize he was an accountant, but I guess it kind of runs in the family.
Take your Zoom call podcasts or webinars to a whole new level.
Nurse Mark and the Green Nurse Podcast. We are here.
That's right. PCM can animate your logo, add eye-catching full-screen graphics, and lower third identifying motion graphics. Look like the network. Act like the network.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, welcome back to Cannabis Chat for a Monday afternoon. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. This is our Cannabinoid Monday, our Medicinal Monday theme show. We always bring on Alissa Merrill. She's come on with another friend of hers, Nikki Lawley, who has also been on guest on this show. And now we're going to go over the pond because we're going to learn a little bit about what's going on in the weed scene in Ireland. And joining us is Martin Condon. And Martin, you have a BSc honors in herbal science, but I do want to know right off the bat, please give us a little background on Martin's World podcast and what has been your cannabis story.
Yeah, certainly. And thanks very much for having me on, Jimmy, and Alissa there as well. My story started with cannabis back when I was about 15, 16, I suppose. My cousin convinced me to try it through peer pressure. And it wasn't until 17 then that I actually had my first brush with the law. And that started me down the road and the journey of cannabis activism. Straight away, I went home. I looked up the law that I had broken, which was a Section 3 possession of a personal amount of cannabis. And I just went right to the roots of it, right back to America where it all began. And once I kind of was armed with this information, then there was really no stopping me. I've been a cannabis activist here now for over 10 years. And the latest part of my journey there was getting that honors degree in herbal science, so I can have a much stronger foundation on which to stand upon when speaking about cannabis. Because of my criminal past, I've kind of argued that there's no justification there for criminalizing me, and it was much more harmful to me as a person criminalizing me than cannabis ever was. When I kind of look at it, I think I was probably a person who would have self-medicated with cannabis from a young age. I would have been a very impulsive, highly energetic person. And I think cannabis calmed me down an awful lot. It allowed me to think for the first time, because I believe I really wasn't engaged with my thoughts at all before I encountered cannabis. There used to be just this thing that would come up in my mind and an action would quickly follow suit. There was no pondering upon what would be the consequences of these actions. So cannabis was very beneficial for me up until that first brush with the law. And then I've been caught with cannabis, unfortunately, about maybe 13 times, maybe 14. I've found myself in front of the judge numerous times, and I've defended myself without the aid of the solicitors or the lawyers. And I got the benefit of donating to the charity box here in Ireland 9 times before I've received my first criminal conviction. And once I received that, then the gloves were off. I was really protesting forward, and I ended up having to do 5 days in Cork prison because I refused to pay the fines that the judge was giving me along with my convictions. It was principle. It wasn't really a money issue, although I do have 2 kids who I'd much rather spend my money on them than give it to a bloody judge for some meaningless fines. So that was kind of how I got into the whole world of cannabis, and and why I started a podcast then, which is Martin's World, to highlight the harms caused by prohibition to our society and the benefits legalization could bring. Ireland has been very much going through a journey there in discovering medical cannabis. We've about just less than 50 patients here now who have a license to be prescribed cannabis. And the latest news from Ireland then in regards to that is those patients no longer have to leave Ireland to go to Holland to collect that medicine. Because all along, patients actually had to leave Ireland to go to Holland to collect that medicine. So now they're going to be able to continue getting it delivered to their front door by some private courier. So there's a lot happening over here.
Do you see it replacing alcohol consumption, or where do you see it? It's got to be, as it's building, where do you see it replacing?
Yeah, well, in regards to adult use of cannabis, I think if we were to have it here, it would be a major boost to harm reduction when it comes to alcohol, because currently there is no alternative for adults who want to go out and enjoy their evening. It's just alcohol or alcohol or sobriety. And
Irish bar right now. I want to go to the clatter and drink. Hearing your voice, I mean, I associate, like drinking, and I'm all about genetics, and so yes, like if there's something you could see it replacing, it would be alcohol consumption then.
Yeah, I think it would. I don't think it would replace it, but I think it would complement it in that, like, let's say if you went out for an evening and rather than sit down and have a couple of pints, you could actually have some fine tasting cannabis. I don't know, you could be a connoisseur and go for certain flavors, and you compare that with a wine. Then that would be a very sophisticated, well spent evening, rather than just lashing back a couple of pints and chatting to the lads at the bar. Nothing wrong with that either, but for me, slower is much better to go with alcohol anyway.
I've seen a lot of bad falls, but even, I see there are terpenes now that don't even have cannabis in them, that you can now add to alcoholic drinks, or alcohol, non-alcohol, whatever. And for energy, like, I think there's some really, exciting, fun ways to, sounds like, introduce into the beverage world, maybe. So we'll have to send some samples your way. We'll connect them after the show.
I look forward to that.
So what are the rules? You said there are. It sounds like there's some kind of a medicinal program, a caretaker program. Is that what I'm hearing in Ireland?
No, so currently there is no cannabis produced in Ireland, zero, except for what they call hemp. And even the farmers there, they don't even want to call hemp cannabis. There's it's like the big C word, cannabis in the farming world. It's ridiculous that they won't even mention what they're growing is cannabis. So currently the only cannabis being prescribed to patients is coming from Holland. The majority of it's coming from Holland, yeah.
And the patients have to go to Holland to get it, yes?
The patients are somebody nominated by the patients. So the most prominent campaigner here is Vera Twomey, and her daughter is Ava. Barry is the surname, but she suffers with epilepsy, Dravet syndrome. And so basically Vera or the husband, Paul, one of the two of them had to go to Holland to get the medicine. So because of the whole coronavirus thing now and the restrictions on travel, those patients that didn't have to go to get that medicine anymore, it got delivered to them by a private courier. So our pharmacists here still can't dispense this medicine. It's still very much a taboo product. It's blacklisted for whatever reason. It's not a recognized medicine here still.
And Epidiolex is found, like, you guys can't even get Epidiolex?
Epidiolex, Sativex, Marinol, and I think Aurora's CBD soft gel caps. I think they're the 4 products now that are approved for use here. But even then, patients still can't get it. It's ridiculous. They have 3 conditions in which people can get access to cannabis here in Ireland. That's for multiple sclerosis. You have the nausea in regards to chemotherapy, and then you have the medicine-resistant epilepsy. So those are the 3 conditions. They've excluded chronic pain, which is the big kick in the teeth, really, for the patients here.
Is the opioid epidemic, is it bad there? Opioid situation, it's horrible here.
There's a big problem here with the prescription of painkillers and the abuse of those painkillers as well. I think there's a lot of people with addictions out there who don't really talk about it, I think. But yeah, I think cannabis, if it was made available as a medicine, it definitely would give, again, people an alternative there. But the big one would be educating our professionals here, because it's one thing having it available, but our professionals are still in this kind of reefer madness era of belief that cannabis is some sort of a dangerous thing that has no medicinal benefits, you know.
Oh my gosh, well,
Now-
that's crazy, and they're wrong. And so we'll be happy to help you
Yeah.
and help educate, because that's
Yeah,
just wrong. Just
Martin
kidding.
doesn't need any more heart problems though, you know, from the law anyway.
Yeah. I was recently up in court actually for possession of €10 worth of cannabis. I got caught with a hand-roll joint there last year, April of 2019, while I was out working. I actually didn't even realize it was in the car, but I got caught with it. And I was in court the other day they got a €400 fine on the conviction, but I'm appealing it, and I'm going to try to use our constitutional rights and our human rights for grounds of it was an illegal search. What happened on that evening, I refused to consent to the search, so the guards should have arrested me there and then and bring me back to the station to search me in line with my constitutional rights, but they didn't. They actually bullied me. They grabbed the keys out of the ignition of my car and very much intimidated me out of the car. And I said it to him, I goes, guards, I'm getting out of my car now, because not consenting, it's under duress. He was like, you're intimidating me. There's two of you, there's one of me. I was delivering food for the Chinese at the time. I had 3 deliveries and I was only 50 yards away from the Chinese store. No smell of cannabis coming from my car.
Wow.
And they just literally profiled me and my car and my looks. And you see I'm wearing a hoodie. This is me.
That happened, huh? Wow.
Well, I'll tell you, it's happened to people of color in this country for decades. Okay. And unfortunately, they go to jail for years for possession of cannabis in the amounts that you had. And, you know, needless to say, there's a national movement called the Last Prisoner Project that's looking to get the jails out, getting people out of jail and getting their records expunged. But I do want to go back to, has there been any movement at all? I mean, you say you're an advocate, you've got your podcast platform, your story is certainly compelling, Martin, I got to tell you. Have we made any progress at all? You know, we were just talking to a CEO of a biotech company out of California who's basically building the case, not only her own personal anecdotal story, but also through the science. And internationally now, you know, the WHO has recommended to take it off its least restrictive list internationally, and the UN has also. Is there any hope in Ireland? Is, I guess, where I'm going with this.
Yeah, I think there's certainly hope. There's a big movement building here, and I don't have much hope for the government. I think if the government are to do anything here, they need to be forced to do it. And for me, civil disobedience from the activists now going forward is going to be a big part of the movement. Again, I interviewed Pepe Rivera there with the podcast from Mexico. And he talked about how down in Mexico, they used plants, they planted seeds, and those were protest plants. And as well, when they have their smoke ups outside of their Senate down there, their joints, whatever they're smoking is a form of protest. So for me, I think that's the big way forward now. Our prisons here in Ireland are at capacity. Our court systems are a joke. If as you heard there, I got caught April 2019 and I didn't get to court until September 2020. I'm now appealing that decision there recently, so it's going to take another year or two before that appeal comes up. So the way I see it is we can basically use the people, the activists, the people out there who want to see the law change to block up the system, just cause it to come to a halt by just sheer people just going in civil disobedience, going into the Garda stations, the cops here, and presenting yourselves. I done a protest back in August where I planted cannabis seeds in a pot in public. I invited members of the public to come and plant the seeds. And afterwards, after that little demonstration on the street, I marched to the local guard station cop shop here. And I presented myself. I said, I have cannabis seeds in this pot. This is an illegal act of cultivation of cannabis. I said, I would like to be processed now for this crime. And I done that live on Facebook and things like that. And I haven't got any feedback from it yet from the authorities, but I don't expect that either. They said they're sending the pot off for analysis. but all that was in there was seeds.
Let me ask you, and I apologize for not studying my Irish Constitution. Okay.
Yeah.
In America, you can get hundreds of thousands of signatures to get a question about the legality on a ballot. Is that even an option in Ireland?
We've think kind of through petitions, all right. It's kind of an instrument of it's almost an online process now, where people can put a petition up on mygov.ie. It's just like a website, and it can be endorsed there. But really, there's nothing at all happens with it. There's petitions that go up there and they remain there. Petitions are they're more symbolic than anything really here. They don't have any real function within the law except for this kind of make believe for our petition system that they have here. I don't see it as being effective. Now, what they do have coming up, which is a citizens' assembly. This was promised in our program for government recently. So Ireland kind of had an election there in February of 2020. I actually was running in it myself. I ran for the Dáil here as well. But as part of that government, when they managed to whip it together, I didn't get elected in, obviously. But as part of that government program, they agreed that they were going to hold a citizens' assembly to have a discussion on drug policy. And the citizens' assembly is a big thing here because we had laws change on our abortion and on gay marriage here in Ireland. And those things happened after they went through this citizens' assembly process.
Gotcha.
So we were hoping that they would call this soon, and they'd taken 99 citizens with a chairperson, which is a judge, I believe, and they get presentations given to them, and then the 99 citizens get to make a vote at the end of that, and that vote then is supposed to sway the government in the direction that they should go on, say, our drug policy. And we were hoping that they would made some announcement by now, but there still has been nothing there, even though it's promised in the program for government here in Ireland. So I think that's the most promising thing going forward, but it's just it hasn't phased out yet. It hasn't. There's no date set as of yet.
And obviously you love your country and you never think about moving just for the sake of cannabis, right?
I was told move by a judge before, and my answer to him was, Judge, I love my country and I've kids here and I have a family here, and I was like, I don't want to leave. I believe that these laws are wrong. And he said, well, the court isn't the place to argue the law. And I was just gobsmacked that a judge would say this. I was, because the judges have power of discretion. I was arguing, there's no justification here for this, judge. I was like, show me my victim here in the court. Is there any reason why you should punish me? I was like, even these punitive, these penalties of fines, the people really getting punished are my kids. They're the ones who benefit from me financially. I don't have any luxurious kind of a lifestyle. I have 2 kids. The money I make goes into keeping the roof over our heads, the food in our fridge and the electricity on, and I barely have anything left to kind of pay my fuel and my insurance and tax and stuff on my car. I come from kind of live a lean lifestyle, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. I'm a student for the best part of my life.
Yeah, but you're not, you're still fighting the fight, which I give you a lot of credit for. It's not easy, especially when you're in a foreign country. Everybody in the United States thinks that they've got it tough here. When they hear the stories of what you're going through in Ireland, I think that will, pardon the expression, will sober up a lot of the people that don't realize how good we have it here in the States. There are now 15 legal states, including where I'm talking to you from, actually where the women are talking, we're all from Massachusetts. And you've got a few brethren in the Boston area, just in case you didn't know that.
Yeah, I know a few people. Yeah, I did. It's just a big Irish spot.
Yeah, but I wonder if there's a way for you to solicit people up from this side of the pond to help your cause in Ireland. Again, you seem to be someone who's extremely passionate and dedicated to this, no matter what. Have you ever reached out to the people in the United States, the pro-cannabis movement, if you will?
I've reached out to some people over time, but one person who has been very present over here is Martin O'Brien. I interviewed him recently. He's the owner of Foxworthy Farms down in the Sonoma County. So he's kind of active here in Ireland in helping the patients He's done work in the past with Patients for Safe Access in America. So they're now trying to pay it out to other countries, and Ireland is one because of Martin's connection here. So yeah, there's certainly people from across the pond looking over here in order to extend a helping hand. And it's more than welcome. If there's anybody out there right now watching, listening, we're more than welcome to help us out.
Well, we're gonna get your contact info and stuff like that certainly before you go, so you can get.
I also set up Students for Sensible Drug Policy. I don't know if you're aware of that organization. I set one up here. I didn't set up the organization, but when I was doing my herbal science degree, I set up the Students for Sensible Drug Policy Society in Cork, IT. And basically, it was a society around harm reduction and drug awareness information. And it was a big hit there, and it still is active right across Ireland. I'm due to go back to college next month to do a master's in biochemistry, and I'll be getting back involved again with the SSDP there. But they're right across America as well, so they're another group that are present over here too, and tremendous work being put in by the students and activists within that network too.
Yeah.
What are the rules and regs? You mentioned hemp is being grown in Ireland. What are the rules and regulations of CBD products in whether it's topicals or infused in any beverages?
Well, I'm very glad you asked this, because there's a growing case at the moment. There's been the sale of CBD flowers here. So CBD flowers are flowers with less than 0.2% THC. So this is what they use as a definition for hemp. But in our law in Ireland, it says cannabis is illegal. The flowers are illegal. So despite any THC at all, it's the flower itself is illegal. So our farmers here are actually only allowed to use the stem and the seeds. Any farmer in Ireland who grows the hemp plant has to destroy the flower, the most valuable part of it, because of our crazy backwards laws. And it's all around the Misuse of Drugs Act 1977, which basically defines cannabis as the mature flowers and leaves of the cannabis genus plant.
Wow. I mean, I'm at a loss for words here. Alissa, I mean, and you, I mean, I'm really glad that we connected, okay? Because it definitely puts in perspective how far the States has come in comparison to other parts of the world, like Ireland.
Look at that interview. I mean, honestly, all you'll have to do is show the person who we were just speaking to, and she's literally pulling together, university research and hospital EHR databases and, genetic clones. I mean, it's there, and it's crazy to think that people don't believe it.
Well, I do another part of Martin's world, which is 420 News. And as part of that, I report news from across the world. And when I was reporting on the New Zealand vote there recently, a part of that, they were highlighting how the natives there, the Maori, they're by and large, they're more punished by the laws there than, say, the non-natives, the white guys coming in. I only reported there earlier today in South Africa, in Cape Town, there was about 300 or 400 Rastafarians out marching, because what they're saying is they're being discriminated and kept out of the cannabis industry, while they say the big white pharmaceutical companies are getting licenses in South Africa to grow cannabis and make the products there from it, while the locals are still being punished and beating, as they're reporting, down there from it. So these cannabis laws, the drug war, it's just been a tool of discrimination right across the world, from where I'm kind of viewing on it. And it's been my experience too as a person in Ireland.
It sounds like, I think you started this by saying, you stick with the science, and there's science there. And I think that's the honest, that's true. And I think that's usually the safest way to go with the best results from what we can tell. So good luck. And if Jimmy, I'm sure we can introduce him to plenty of people. Help.
We know plenty of people, and actually I know a lot of people with Irish connections. And I'm gonna, who I'm gonna talk to? I know who I'm gonna talk to. Walter Sullivan. Alissa, you know Walter. This guy was the head of the Alcoholic Beverage Commission here in Massachusetts for a long time, and now he's a pro-cannabis advocate and an attorney. And Actually, Martin, I'm going to introduce you to Walter because I'll be a great guest. Okay, I get it. But he'd be a great guest for you as well because let's face it, he's very proud of his heritage. And if that's the least I could do is connect you. But I got to ask you a question. Do you know the origination of 420?
I hear a couple of myths around it, but I don't know, is there any real confirmed story?
Yes.
There is a confirmed story. So what I
100%.
believe
I tell it on this show every single time we do it. Would you like me to enlighten you a little bit or not?
Dude, let me see if it's what I believed it to be. I believed it was the college students who met up for the smoke around 420, but is that a...
I love this is why, you know, the telephone game you whisper something in somebody's ear and then they tell the next person, then by the time it gets around the room it's a completely different thing. Okay, so here's the truth. And by the way, Google knows this, right? Because Google knows everything. In San Rafael, California, in 1971, there was a bunch of guys, they called themselves the Waldos. And the Waldos used to meet across the street from the high school at the Louis Pasteur statue at 4:20 to catch a little buzz. Now, law enforcement, being those sharp people that they are, and I guess you've had a little experience with them too, picked up the fact that it was at 4:20, there was public consumption of cannabis going on, and they adopted that as their call, you know, when they have a police call, oh, check out the corner vine in Main Street, you know, there's 420 going on. The cannabis community obviously adopted the 420 call, and it has now been absorbed, and it's also now a holiday. Well, it's not a holiday, but it's, you know, April 20th is the celebration of cannabis here. Yeah. And that's the truth. And if you don't believe me, Google the Waldos and 420, and you'll see that whole story. And one of our jobs is to track these guys down and get at least one of them to come on and talk a little bit about it. But that's where it all started. And that is not a myth. Those are facts. Okay.
I'm delighted you shared that with me now. I'm enlightened. This was an evening well spent.
Well, Martin Condon, we wish you the best of luck. Keep up the fight. I've got a lot of respect for what you've gone through for this cause. And Lord knows I'm the type of guy that definitely wants to connect you with others. So I'm going to do my best to at least get you to Walter Sullivan. You'll enjoy him. And by the way, Walter also hosts a podcast called In the Weeds. Okay. But my In the Weeds was first. Okay. So In the Weeds with Jimmy Young preceded In the Weeds with Walter Sullivan. That being said, Martin Condon, how can people get in touch with you?
I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and on YouTube also. So those are the four places I'm most active. And I always do my best to respond to messages and comments left there from people who are asking all sorts of questions. The most common question I get is regarding cannabis and medicines, and people coming to me with ailments saying, I have this condition, would cannabis be beneficial for me? It breaks my heart being so much not being able to help these people physically, but I can give them the information, but I wish so much I could use the skills I have in growing cannabis and procuring the medicines. But sadly, I'm restricted. I can't do that here legally yet.
Yet. I love that. All right. And it's Martin's World podcast, right?
It is Martin's World podcast on all of those platforms mentioned.
There you go. Well, Martin Condon, great to talk with you. Great to officially chat as well. And I know you know how to get in touch with me. So you stay on me and I'll reach out to you and we'll schedule something. And it'll be great to continue this conversation.
Brilliant. Thanks very much again for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, Jimmy and Alissa, and your friend Alissa as well. I didn't catch her name.
Nikki. She's an advocate.
Nikki.
Definitely have to have her on your show as well. She's a nurse, an advocate. She's everything. The language you speak. So
that's right.
I'm filling up my schedule for January, so I'll be in touch.
There you go. And keep up the good fight, as they say. All right, Martin Condon, appreciate it. We're going to take a break. We'll come back on the other side with our final guest of this Monday. And it's the green nurse herself, Sherri Tutkis. So don't go away.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Well, hello there. Here we are again, another live stream from the new studio of Pro Cannabis Media. This is Cannabis Chat, and I'm Jimmy Young. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Weed Talk News. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media.
And I'm Kurt Dalton, the founder of Cannabis.net.
Every week, Kurt and I get together to review some of the biggest stories in the cannabis industry. He and I talk about them. We have a few comments, and then we get reports from Canada, New York, and Washington, D.C.
And this week's no different, Jimmy. We finally have Vermont moving toward recreational cannabis with retail opening in their state. We have an old state and a new state, Colorado and Illinois, both setting cannabis sales records in July, as well as multiple efforts to legalize the cannabis plant in America, including our friend Steve D'Angelo getting involved.
But first, let's go to Deborah Borchardt in New York to check on the financial weed scene. Deborah?
Thanks, Kurt. Thanks, Jimmy. Well, things seem to keep going the wrong way for Charlotte's Web.
Whoa, Jimmy Young in the weeds on the water this week. We've got the CEO of Kushko, Nick Kovacevic, with me. This guy has built his little company in 6 years from $2 billion in sales to $145 million in sales.
We can get this thing to be fully legal here in the next few years, I believe, but it's going to take far longer for the stigma to change.
I think you guys are the pro-cannabis story.
And I love pro-cannabis media.
Hi, I'm Jody Roberts with Eastern Security State, and I love pro-cannabis media.
Hi, I'm Laura Beener. I'm the president co-founder of The Healing Rose, and I love pro-cannabis media. It's been such an integral part of our success here at The Healing Rose.
And you know what? The best media company out there is Pro Cannabis Media. Look out for them. They'll make you famous.
Hi, I'm George, and I love Pro Cannabis Media. I also love Western Mass Hydroponics, where we've got everything you need from seed to bloom to bud, and then to smoke it afterwards.
Take your Zoom call podcasts or webinars to a whole new level.
Nurse Mark and the Green Nurse Podcast. We are here.
That's right. PCM can animate your logo, add eye-catching full-screen graphics, and lower third identifying motion graphics. Look like the network. Act like the network.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Alrighty. Welcome back to Cannabis Chat for a Monday afternoon. I'm Jimmy Young from the Pro Cannabis Media Studios just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. And I am joined by Alissa Merrill and her friend Nikki Lawley. And we're now joined by the one and only Sherri Tutkis, the Green Nurse. Sherri, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, hey, everybody. It's truly a pleasure. Every day that I can educate on my favorite plant and the endocannabinoid system, I will take that opportunity to share that information. Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And I'll tell you, we've heard a lot of anecdotal stories and, of course, some science to back it up lately, Sherri. And first of all, give yourself a little plug. Tell us how people can see the Green Nurse show. Not only do we stream it, but I know you do too.
Yeah. So we, Mark, my business partner, Mark, and I.
Nurse
Mark of the Green Nurse. Yes. Nurse Mark and I do a morning show every morning called The Daily Dose of AFA. And AFA means absolutely fucking amazing, because that is what you all are, right? So it's your daily dose of AFA, where we bring hope and inspiration for growth and healing. We pick an AFA word of the day. Then we talk about self-care and how we're taking care of our endocannabinoid system. And then we give you a hug and a nug of information on cannabis, terpenes, what's going on in the news. So it's just a really quick 15-minute wake up, get your daily dose of AFA and start your day off the good way. And then we also do a podcast on Wednesday night and Friday night.
There you go. Very active, and we're very proud to be working with you guys, Pro Cannabis Media, and we look forward to a very long relationship, because some of the stories, and Alissa and Nikki, I want you to join in here, get your impressions of the two guests. It's really interesting. In Ireland, where it's not legal, and he's fighting every step of the way. And then you go to California, and you've got a major company who's using science and research, not just to keep telling the story, but to also enlighten and educate people. It's just an amazing time to be part of this, isn't it?
Truly, truly amazing. And this year, 2020, is the year of the nurse. And the part that's so good is cannabis nurses are coming out of the closet. We are seeing nurses from all walks of life embrace this plant and truly want to learn how to incorporate plant medicine into what they're already doing when they're working with patients, because they're truly realizing that the endocannabinoid system is the most important system in our bodies. We haven't been taught it in nursing school, but the National Council State Boards of Nursing put out a call to action in 2018 that all nurses, nursing students, regular nurses, advanced practice nurses should all have a clinical understanding in 6 essential areas in regards to cannabinoid therapeutics. So now that this information is out there, truly, truly, we are hoping to get more nurses and medical professionals on board, decreasing the stigma through sharing compelling stories and through bringing research and information to the forefront for them to explore.
And it's
Alissa,
amazing.
go ahead.
You use then struggle though. So coming from like the pharmaceutical industry, I feel like the stigma is finally gone. And then the products that they're selling at the gas station are not the ones I want my friends and family to take. So, I still struggle with finding the right products and finding a delivery system that's going to work, and less is more. Where are you finding the most success right now as someone who takes care of patients? Like, what type of products are you seeing, or what conditions are you seeing helping patients the most on a regular basis right now?
Okay, because of COVID-19, we're all going through trauma. Okay, it's a huge traumatic year for so many different people. You think about, we have medical trauma with the pandemic, we have political trauma, we had the Black Lives Matter. So we have all of these different things that are bringing up people's traumas and dramas. So what happens when we're faced with trauma and drama? Well, our stress response, we don't sleep as much. If people have autoimmune conditions, their pain flares kick up. And people are depressed. It's depressing. So we're seeing at the Green Nurse, when we work with patients for medical consultations, for medical cards, and we also do consultations without medical cards. But that's what we're seeing people come, is for symptoms related to chronic stress, trauma. People are being traumatized, not only patients. Okay, there's a whole other concept called medical and pharmaceutical trauma. I did a presentation on that for the Cannabis Nurses Network, where as clinicians, we don't mean to, but we didn't learn any other way. We're traumatizing our patients with medical procedures and pharmaceuticals, et cetera, et cetera. Now we have clinicians on the other side that are taking care of these sick patients. And with this whole COVID-19 coronavirus, things are constantly shifting and changing, and nurses are having to make decisions that they should not have to make. So are medical professionals. And so they're being traumatized. So it's not only, we're seeing a lot of compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue incorporates 2 different things: burnout and experiencing having a trauma. So seeing someone die, not being able to be there, not having, seeing patients not being able to be surrounded by their loved ones, when they are dying. There's a lot of emotional trauma going on right now in the communities, not only with patients, but with providers. So a lot of the providers that we're seeing are coming to us. The number one reason is insomnia, anxiety, and depression. And so we're seeing, it's pretty impressive. And then basically too, the interesting thing, we've certified a lot of doctors from the Boston area through our practice. And the very interesting thing was when I asked them how they heard about us, how did you hear about us? You take care of one of my patients.
Oh.
So this gives me the chills. So I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. They heard about cannabis through a patient, the green nurses. So it was just interesting that truly the community, so healing in the community, it's going to overlap. It's going to take time, but as nurses, we are building this in the community to educate and empower patients to make decisions that are best for them, not only with cannabis, but other progressive therapies that are starting to come up to the forefront that we're seeing make a huge difference in patients' lives.
Reiki, I feel like are you learning, didn't you do a class on Reiki? Was that something you guys were a part of?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So we do energy healing. So one of the services that we offer, a lot of us are Reiki masters. I'm a Reiki master. I'm a reconnective healing practitioner. And also we have there's this new therapy that we just started to offer. It's called Healy. And Healy is a microcurrent device that's been FDA approved for chronic pain, acute pain, migraines, fibromyalgia. And it's a microcurrent device that works on quantum sensors. So it delivers vibration and frequency to cells for bioenergetic homeostasis. That's going to be a whole show, Jimmy.
My God, I'd have to buy a vowel to get to that.
I don't quite understand it, but like I know enough to know that there's like, I would have thought you were crazy 6 months ago. I've been like, okay, but I get it. I don't understand it yet. Like, I think it's hard. To your point, like, I love, nurses do call the shots, I think, because when the side effects are called in and, it's being reported to the doctors, it's the nurse, like, she's the person who's seeing how a patient feels on a regular basis. So
think about this. So this is how I kind of developed the Green Nurse platform. So when I was a nurse in the traditional system, one of the most rewarding and challenging jobs I had was working in the intensive care unit, and all the intensive care units. So as nurses, we were the pivotal person. We were the point person that the doctor came to, the physical therapist, the nutritionist, the psychiatrist, the psychologist, the social worker. They were all coming to the nurse. And so we act as liaisons even in the traditional system. And so that actually carries over into the community as to how we work with patients in the community, taking care of them, utilizing cannabinoid therapeutics. So we're the point person. So we can help patients get their medical card. We can help them to educate them on dispensaries. We can help them connect to other practitioners that are cannabis friendly. So a lot of times what happens is patients will come to us for medical cards and then they're scared. They don't want their other providers to know about it. So that's where we can step in and we can have those conversations. You have no idea how many times I've gotten on the horn and I've had those talks with those doctors and they appreciate it. It's just to quell their insecurity about something that they don't know. And so we don't shame them or make them wrong, because I was on the other side of the bed in 2012. I only understood cannabis to be recreational. And here we are in 2012 was when medical cannabis passed in Massachusetts. Medical cannabis wasn't introduced into my life until the end of 2014. I truly believe that if doctors and nurses were on board and understood the endocannabinoid system, I would not have suffered as long as I suffered. I had a classic endocannabinoid deficiency that was made worse by the traditional system.
Now, Sherri, you said something that the endocannabinoid system is the most important system in our bodies. Can you quantify that and explain that?
Oh, it's my favorite topic. So when I lecture and I educate, there's a ton of good science, ton of good images, ton of graphics that can describe it. But I like to break it down simple because I'm working with patients. So you see this little handy dandy umbrella up here. Imagine, this is how I educate people. Imagine that your body is the umbrella. All of the different spokes of the umbrella are your different organ systems, your body systems. And I like to use the umbrella because it shows the interconnectedness of our entire body. So the spokes of the umbrella are your central nervous system, your cardiovascular, respiratory, gastrointestinal, reproductive, immune system, mucoskeletal system. So you have all these systems that make up the body of the umbrella. And then the fabric that attaches to the spokes of the umbrella are those neurotransmitter signaling systems that give messages to the spokes of the umbrella to either do something or not do something. So the endocannabinoid system is an on-off switch. So at the very tippy top of the umbrella is the endocannabinoid system. It blankets on top of our entire umbrella because we have cannabinoid receptors on all of the spokes of our umbrella. We also have cannabinoid receptors on the different fabric pieces of the umbrella, which is the neurotransmitter signaling systems. And at the tippy top of the umbrella, we make internal endogenous cannabinoids similar to the plant to shower on our umbrella when we need it. So, right. So here's the cool.
So good. The way you just described that was so good. I'm sorry, but Jim, it has to be a clip because that was probably the best way it's been described to me. So well done.
Score.
Please.
So yeah, so just think about it. So we're creating internal endogenous cannabinoids upon demand, depending upon what's going on our umbrella. If we don't make enough of our own at the tippy top of the umbrella, guess what happens? We don't get rained on. We don't get showered on. Messages don't get to the fabric of the umbrella. Therefore, they don't get to the spokes of the umbrella. And then what happens? Our body is always trying to autocorrect and go back into balance. And without the internal endogenous cannabinoids, if we have a deficiency and we're doing things that aren't nourishing our endocannabinoid system, then what happens is we have a downregulation. Body systems start not to work so good. You start to have breaks in your umbrella, holes in the fabric of the umbrella. And before you know it, your umbrella is not going up and down very nicely. So.
That's right.
Really good.
Well,
I really like that, the way you explained it, because it's so complicated. Doctors don't, and healthcare professionals don't understand it. I still think like the interconnected pieces, like neurotransmitters, and does CBD make them go up or down in some of the directions? I'd like, we'll talk more later, but
well, that's the thing too. That's the part that's so cool is that the endocannabinoid system, internal endogenous cannabinoids, are either telling our body to do something or stop doing something, depending upon what it needs. So it's either an agonist, let's go, or antagonist, let's stop. So it's on-off switch. Here's a cool example. You scrape your knee, right? And all of a sudden you're bleeding and there's dirt that's getting in there. The endocannabinoid system, time to turn on. Boink, the light switch goes on. We release these internal endogenous cannabinoids to go to a part of our immune system to release pro-inflammatory substances to go to the area, to create inflammation, to clean the area out. Right. And so then what happens is our endocannabinoid system, if it's healthy and nourished, once that part's over, the endocannabinoid system's, I'm good, and I'm going to turn off. Well, if you don't have enough of your own internal endogenous cannabinoids, what happens? That off switch may not go off so fast. And then your body's being flooded with more inflammation. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
I think, Sherri, I've always said this about you. You make things understandable. You simplify them. For someone like me who doesn't know chemistry from a hole in the wall or biology, I stayed away from all those subjects. I didn't want to have anything to do with science. And now science is part of the argument, and science is we're all part of science now, and we're finally starting to give the respect to scientists. And what I'm seeing is a lot more females getting involved with science. Is that accurate?
Well, I'm not sure, but okay. I would have to say with nurses, there's a lot more nurses that are, I'd say, getting on the bus for sure. And the part that's interesting too is, the reason why I teach the way I teach is because it is so abstract, and I have ADHD. So in order for me I have to like really think of a way of how I can get this information across in a certain amount of time that's not going to overwhelm someone, because there's so much information.
You don't have
right. Hey, anyway, we got a shout out on the chat room, so I want to make sure we give a plug to this guy. And actually, you know what? I'm not going to say it's a guy, because it's you know how everybody has a code name on the chat rooms, and it's Dr. Sensei. Okay. And he says, you guys are my favorite channel on Twitch. I'll be studying medicinal plant chemistry at Northern Michigan University in January 2021. I am amazed at how many traditional universities now are embracing cannabis as a field of study. It's amazing to me how quickly the university system has adapted to this.
It started in 2018. So I taught my first college course, which is interesting because I only have my bachelor's in science and nursing. but I taught advanced practice nurse practitioner class that was graduating in 2018, a 3-hour course on cannabinoid therapeutics with 2 of my other nursing colleagues. And since then too, Pacific College, I've been a guest lecturer there as well. So yeah, they're starting to embrace it. And the part that's interesting too is this plant is constantly evolving and changing, and information is changing, and it changes so rapidly. Like when anyone says a blanket statement about cannabis, I'm like, the plant's going to show you the truth.
Yeah.
Right? You have to roll with it. That's the one thing that the plant has shown me, is that go with the flow and you will grow, and never make a blanket statement about the plant, because it's constantly evolving. It is really, really fascinating.
Couldn't agree more. Yes.
I want to, we all know who Beth Waterfall is, right? From Elevate Northeast. She made a statement on a show that has stuck with me for weeks now, if not a month. I can't even remember what day it is anyway. But she said there are no experts in cannabis. And the reason why she said that is because we're still scratching the surface about what we know about this plant. And Sherri, as someone who knows more about this plant than anybody I think I've ever met, do you agree with that or disagree with what Beth said about experts in cannabis?
It depends, it depends upon how you want to say. Like, I'll tell you, I'm an expert at my own condition. I'm an expert with my own endocannabinoid system because I've mastered it and I learned how to. So what I aim to do is teach people not only about the plant, but other things that they can do progressively to support and nourish the endocannabinoid system. It's constantly changing. Everyone's an expert. There you go. Everyone's an expert in their own mind.
Yeah, thinks they're an expert in their own mind, right?
Well, here's the thing too. Here's another really important concept. The more I study, the more I realize I don't know. The more I engage in the plant, in the science, in the research, the more I realize it is endless. There is so much information that I haven't even scratched the surface. And so a lot of, even when I'm working with patients, have I seen everything? No, but I know the endocannabinoid system enough and know how to, work with the different compounds and terpenes and cannabinoids and with what a patient's currently doing and how to marry. So it's truly a lot of the patients that come to us, it's about bridging the gap from what they're not getting from traditional medicine. And then once that happens, they can make a decision as to what they want to do with their traditional medicine. But truly, it's the expertise, everyone's an expert at their own, that's the thing, is teaching. This is what we want to do, right? Think about it. We want to teach patients how to be experts at their own health, right?
Absolutely.
My goal is to stay out of the hospital and out of the doctor's office as much as possible.
There's a risk, I think, of playing Dr. Google. And that's, for myself, even came from the pharmaceutical industry, and I always wanted to be careful, not to, I personally, for me, I look to experts, and it's been really hard to find them. So now that I found people, like yourself, now I want to point to the top experts and not to go back to pharma, but it's got to get the wrong voices are being heard.
Yes. So here's another interesting thing. The first cannabis nursing textbook is being published in January of 2021, and the Green Nurses wrote a chapter in it, which is really, really exciting.
And so active in a nursing association. Oh, sorry.
Say that again.
Are you active? If someone's a nurse and they want to learn more information, is there an association that they can
So we're actually, we kind of help nurses. We do mentorship and we have community. And so when nurses, it depends upon, so this is the thing, a nurse entering into the cannabis space, there are so many different things that she could do. So what we actually do is we have an intake form. So it's just basically asking nurses where they are in their journey. What is their history, in the traditional nursing? What are their interests? Are they doing holistic nursing? Are they doing anything on the side? Have they taken any courses? So it's truly like looking at what a nurse is, and then their wish list. If you could do anything in the cannabis space, what would you do? And so then we work with them on that realm. And then there are other organizations that we belong to that are awesome for professional development. So the professional development organizations that I'm a member of is the American Cannabis Nurses Association. And Nurse Mark, just so you know, just became president-elect of the American Cannabis Nurses Association, which is really exciting. And then the Cannabis Nurses Network. So they're both just a little bit different, but they offer something truly valuable for nurses. And then where our organization comes in is the Green Nurses. We teach clinicians that have already gotten the education how to apply it to patient consultations. So they learn all of this intricate stuff. And then how do you actually consult with the patient and not dumb it down, but make it like so they can understand it in a certain amount of time? Because when I first started consulting with patients, you could be on the phone for 2 hours. Right. And then I realized, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm teaching them stuff that I'm learning as a nurse. Patients need to learn it in a different level. A lot of analogies, a lot of, handouts, a lot of different ways, not learning the way that nurses learn. So teaching nurses how to teach patients is what we do. How to consult.
You teach doctors here. Yeah. It's a very middle.
So here it is. Here's an example. When you go to nursing school, right? You go and you sit in a classroom and you have the classes and you might go have your clinicals. But then when you're done and you're ready to start and you start in an organization, you have a preceptor. So you have someone that works with you for, 12 weeks, 14 weeks, 16 weeks, and they work with you side by side so you can feel comfortable taking on your own patient caseload. That's what we do. We teach teach clinicians how to apply the information that they got at those institutions and work directly with patients so patients can understand it and they can make a difference. The other thing that we're doing a little bit differently, which kind of transformed over this year of COVID-19, was how we approach patients. So this is the other really cool thing. Oftentimes as clinicians, what are we doing? We're focusing on body parts, symptoms, disease processes, right? So we're focusing on body. If we're lucky, we get to the mental emotional component of helping them. And rarely do we ever get to the spiritual aspect of healing. So as clinicians, cannabis nurses, we're kind of doing it backwards. We're reaching a patient's spirit first. The very first thing that cannabis has given so many patients that I've worked with, including myself, is hope, right? The first thing it brings people is hope, right? So that you think about hope. With hope, what does that do? It kind of gives you a little bit of inspiration. And when you're inspired, you're in spirit. And when you're in spirit, you get creative and you want to do things differently. So hope, inspiration. Well, once you're inspired to do something and you actually do it, you're going to grow. You're going to grow in health, right? And so hope, inspiration for growth and healing. Healing isn't the absence of illness or disease, but it's doing the best you can with what you have right here, right now. So now what we're doing is we're using hope, inspiration, growth, and healing. And we're saying, come get high with us, because that's what high means. High means hope, inspiration for growth and healing.
Really, isn't this all somehow Jewish as Hanukkah? Isn't this somehow related to Jewish? I should know my heritage better. Isn't there a connection with high? Does anyone following me? No.
Oh, no. I
started with Tikkun Olam, so that's where I was going with that.
I don't know about the Jewish tradition.
Okay.
We can help. We can enlighten you with that, Sherri. We can both do that. Happy to do that. But as usual, I could go on listening to you for hours. I really appreciate you coming in on a short notice. Always a pleasure to see your smiling face, and your messaging is so important, and we're so lucky to have you on board with us. So I thank you from the deepest part of my heart. I don't BS people. I speak the truth. I'm painfully honest, as we have all found out. So thank you again for your appearance.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
And Alissa and Nikki and Amy Berliner, who joined us, and Martin's World podcast. What a show we've had here on Monday on our Cannabis Chat. A reminder that we are going on hiatus during the holidays, but you'll be seeing plenty of Sherri Tutkis and the Green Nurse. You'll be seeing plenty of Alissa and Cannabis Chat on Medicinal Mondays, because we're going to live stream 12 hours a day from December 21 to December 24th. And then I believe it's December 27th to December 31st. That's the Monday through Thursday, both those weeks in between and around this holiday season. And I'll be popping in at 4:20 or 4 o'clock once in a while, just to make sure everybody knows that we are truly live. So again, for everybody here at Pro Cannabis Media, remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Let's use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you Wednesday on Cannabis Chat.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another very special edition of In the Weeds with Jimmy Young, our regular podcast on Pro Cannabis Media. And I am very happy to have alongside in the Zoom room a friend, a new friend named Mike Corso. He is from Long Island, New York. He's a Mets fan. I'm going to let him get away with it, okay?
Yes,
for the
thank
time
you.
being. But more importantly, we share a lot of the very similar skills, experiences as far as media goes. Mike, first of all, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us on In the Weeds today.
My pleasure, Jimmy, and I am thankful for the forces that brought us together.
That's right. Whatever those forces were. I think one of them was Kurt Dalton, who I give a lot of credit to from Cannabis.net. It's like anytime Kurt says you got to talk to this guy, I take his advice. Right.
We thank Kurt. We thank Kurt. We thank social media. We thank what we're talking about today for bringing us together.
That's right. And it's all about this amazing plant that is emerging as not only a major political issue, but an opportunity. The green wave that has been moving towards the North American continent more and more and quicker over the last few years is a fascinating time. We both recognize we're in a historic time when it comes to the cannabis plant and its acceptance in mainstream because of the essential nature of how society that has legal states have viewed this whole thing. So Mike, first of all, thank you again. Tell me a little bit about Roove.io, and that's ROOVE.io.
ROOVE. There's no E.
It says E. I'm reading it right here.
Get rid of that. Did I give that to you?
I printed it off your website.
Well,
all right, walk me through Roove.io. That was a riot right there. I'm not editing that out, by the way.
No, you shouldn't. You shouldn't. So Roove is an acronym for Return on Organic Value. And it's very little known, very little used, but I thought it was cool and it sounded nice. It flowed, it rolled off the tongue, and you use the .io as one of those domain, top-level domain extensions, and it sounds good. So Roovio is the agency that I created a couple of years ago. We actually started as a building out an SEO platform and then decided that we were going to just turn it into a full-stack marketing agency, which is what it is. Now, when we did start it, it was basically designed to help local businesses, small to mid-sized businesses across North America with their digital marketing. But what started happening at the beginning of the year, especially, I was getting calls from a lot of businesses in the cannabis space. So growers, cultivators, CBD retailers, dispensaries. And so a third of our clients are in the cannabis space, and that's going to grow. That's going to grow, I'm sure. So essentially,
it's going to grow like a weed, right?
It's going to grow like a weed. Don't do that again. And we are obsessed with sharing knowledge and educating these dispensaries, especially because I get a lot of dispensaries in local markets that need to get the word out there. Just overwhelmed. They work like 60 hours a week on their business. They don't have time for the basic fundamentals of online marketing. So whenever I talk to anybody, I go through a 5-point checklist, which we'll kind of touch on in a minute. But the fact is, you have a dispensary, you have a local business. You need to get people in the door, and you need to be found online. That's the essence.
Right. And of course, you mentioned dispensary, and that's really just one little part of this cannabis industry. And I know you reprimanded me for my use of a pun there, but this is one of those industries that it's almost unavoidable. There's so many applications and cliches and, multi-use and that kind of like Roove, but I do want to ask you a little bit about when you go into business and you have experience, I know, with other businesses and other services. While the cannabis industry is unique, okay, there are services and there are products with any business. You're either a product or you're a service, right? When you're building your business model and all that. Similar strategies as far as SEO goes, whether you're a service or a product?
Yes. And an example is, let's just take it away from cannabis or dispensaries for a second. you could be, say, a plumber that sells certain, hardware, and you could also provide that service. You need to, whichever business you're promoting, you have to do basically the same things. You have to be active on social media. You have to make sure your Google and Facebook business pages exist and they're optimized. You want to make sure you have a Google My Business listing. You want to have a Yelp listing. You want to make sure your website is converting and that you have good SEO going on behind that. I just shot out the 5-point checklist, so we can just go right through that at the end.
No, we will. We'll get to that presentation in a minute, but I wanted, that's called a tease. You know that.
Yeah.
That's called a tease, right? It's a tickler, right? I do want to go back to your own personal experience. Why is Mike Corso so uniquely qualified to be an expert in this space?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm an internet Viking. I started doing digital marketing and SEO before anyone even knew what that was. In fact, I was the first person hired by the record industry to do online music marketing. So I was hired by all the major record labels and about a dozen independent record labels before Billboard even started reporting on the internet and the World Wide Web. And we started by promoting music on all of the online forums like CompuServe and AOL and Prodigy, and all of these listservs that were out there. And that's
MySpace was
and
on there?
MySpace. So and then we started building websites for for music artists and for record labels, and then just branched out. So then I was doing consulting in many other industries, and then I went in-house. I was actually the SEO lead at Gartner for 3 years, and then I've had long-term contracts with companies in the education space, the fintech space, et cetera. And then last year, like I said, I started realizing that in addition to the need on the local business level, there was a big need in the cannabis space to do smart promotion and not spinning their wheels, helping them not to spin their wheels and helping them to focus on what's really essential. So that's sort of my journey. I've just, why am I kind of focusing on this industry? Because I see that there is green in them hills, and there's an opportunity here and it's only going to grow.
Right. Tremendous upside, as they say in the sports world, right? It's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The projections are astronomical. And again, we both feel like we're at the very beginning of a historic time. And that joneses me every day. That gets me excited every day. I never know who's going to be watching or chatting online or sending me an email or meeting me in one of these online forums. You meet some really cool people. And I do kind of like the fact that we're almost age appropriate. And, we have similar backgrounds. We have similar views of the world, if you will.
Yes.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to allow you to share your screen.
Sure.
And allow you to walk me through as if I were a dispensary owner, for instance. Okay.
Yes.
And it looks like you are ready to rock. I'm viewing Mike Corso's screen. And hang on, let's just make sure.
And it says dispensary marketing on it.
It does. We're ready to rock. Go ahead. Take me through it.
So this is what we're talking about. First, we're going to talk about how marketing has changed over the years with the advent of the phone. A lot of this stuff isn't new to people, but it's worth just pointing out that in the past, people would hear about something, they'd go buy it, and then they tell people about it. And then once this whole mobile obsession and technology came along, we realized that that's what Google calls the zero moment of truth. This is where people are doing their research before they actually go make the purchase. So it's a step in between here. And the main thing we want to emphasize, whether it's, again, a local business or a dispensary, is that you have to make sure you stand out where people are making these decisions. So that means making sure that in social media, you have a well-optimized presence, whether it's on Yelp or Google, a Google My Business listing, or an Instagram page, a Twitter account, a Facebook business page, LinkedIn business page. All of those things are necessary, and I'll explain maybe in the future why that helps in SEO. But let's talk about that cannabis customer journey, taking into account the idea of being present in all of these places. First, there's that point of awareness where you saw something on search, or you got an email, or you saw a YouTube video. And after that, you're going to find something about that company, you're going to do research on a company, and you want to make sure their reputation is 5 stars across the board, right? Then you're going to, get to that website. And if it's optimized well, if they have a good call to action, or if their whatever they're selling is presented in a very alluring way, you're going to buy. And then hopefully you become an advocate, and you talk to your friends and say, yeah, I went to this dispensary and I got Bubba Kush and it was great, or Tommy Chong, and you should do the same thing. So all of the channels that make up these steps along this customer journey are, listed here, are things that we all know, but we all don't really know the priority or how to go about making sure that you, for instance, have a solid reputation online. What does that mean? Making sure that you are found on Google Maps, making sure that, again, on your website, that there's a strong point of conversion there. So we talk about how it's important to win at each stage of this, but you definitely have to go in a certain order. But before we get to that order, let's just talk about this process again for this person who's searching for the right dispensary. They're going to go through this process of hearing about somebody or a storefront. They're going to do some search. They're going to do some research, find out whether they're, the reviews and the testimonials are positive, and then hopefully they're going to make that purchase. But what can happen is if you don't have your reputation, buttoned up, and you don't have like current and a good number of 5-star reviews on your Google listing and your Facebook business page, what happens is you lose that potential customer to your competitor. That's business B right here. And you've wasted all this money and time that you spent, let's say you were doing paid ads here and you were doing some SEO work, and maybe you would, asking some people to give you a review or a testimonial, but it wasn't, it's not current, or you didn't respond to a negative review, but your competitor is looking great in this section. Well, where do you think that person is going to go? They're going to click to the next listing, which does have a lot of current reviews, current testimonials, positive, and you've been engaging and responding to those people. So you've lost that potential customer. So we say that the easiest and fastest way to increase your marketing budget is to use your competitors. Well, that's what is happening if you play your cards right. If you don't, they're using your budget. So
Right.
Where's the smartest place to start? Go ahead.
I'm gonna call a timeout here for a second. Two things come to mind when you say using your competitors. A lot of times when you go searching for a product, smart companies will buy the name of their competitors, right?
Right.
Don't they do that?
Sure.
So
That's in paid advertising, like when
Right.
you're doing pay-per-click advertising. But we're really talking more about social media.
Yep.
And we're talking about what's showing up in those organic search results. So when you see that map listing or the 3-pack in the top of the search results, or you just see the Google listing, like when you do a search for somebody, on the right side of the search page shows their Google My Business listing.
Right.
And that's what's going to show their number of reviews, how recent those reviews are, whether you're doing a Q&A on your Google listing, like if you're optimizing that Google My Business listing. Now, if they do the same search for another company that they heard of or another storefront, and they see a much better presentation, they're going to go there. But again, that's more social media related, or what you're doing on these social platforms without necessarily paying for that placement in the top of the search results.
Got it.
So
where's the smartest place to start, Mike?
I can't believe you just asked that question.
I read off a teleprompter. You know
because
what I mean?
because it's not this linear sequence here as presented. It's really starting here at your website, making sure that your website has a good conversion point. So in brief, what I always emphasize is that the top of the website, have a video, put a video introducing your business, who you are, your personality, your voice. Next to that, have a form where people can enter their name and email in order to download something of value. It could even be a coupon or a special offer, whatever it is, or it could just be like a single PDF document of, the genetics of this strain or that strain, right? Just something of value that, does this help me with sleep? Does this help me with anxiety? How does CBD compare? So there's something you want to put on there to make your website convert so that you're collecting an email address, and then you are going to be able to follow up with them as often as you want via email marketing automation. So that's that's where you start. Then you make sure that your social media is active. You want to make sure, like with our clients, we make sure they're posting at least twice a week across all the major platforms. Even if you don't think they're relevant, they can help in terms of SEO, because if someone catches an article that you posted or a link you posted, and then they link to you for doing that, that those inbound links help in terms of your SEO. So that's on the the search side. Then on the reputation side, we spend a lot of time. Every week we're looking at our clients' customer lists, and we're updating those lists in our dashboard that they have access to. And we send out a request to those new customers to post a review, and we give them a link, to the Facebook business page or their Google My Business listing where these reviews should be showing up. So that's something that you want to, maintain throughout the year.
Now, you said a minimum of 2 posts per week. Is there a maximum, and where is that tipping point for too much posting?
I can't answer that with any scientific proof, but if you continue to pump out valuable information that is going to help people with their journey, with their research, there's really no limit. But if you were posting, say, more than 2-3 times a day, that could be a little bit much. People may then say, I'm not going to follow you again, unless you're really putting out creative stuff. And as an aside, when you're doing any social media posting, I'll just give you this tip. You want to think of thirds. So a third of your post should be about your business, maybe special offers, whatever, your product. A third should be just industry related. Again, it could be like scientific, research that you're sharing, like, again, anxiety articles, or how to improve sleep with, cannabis, whatever it is. And then a third should just be random, entertaining stuff based on your personality, your voice, what you're interested in, so that people see that there's, someone with a pulse behind the business that shares some of the same interests that the consumer has. So social media, be very active, but don't just shill for the company 100% of the time. A third of the time max, and then a third industry related, a third fun stuff. So that takes care of like the green and yellow here. Once you have that down, and you're getting people to like kind of come over and convert, whether they're giving you their email address for more info or they're buying something, then they'll start to advocate for you. And that's through customer reviews, which we help our clients get. We want to make sure that those reviews are showing up. So once all of this is kind of locked down, then awareness is like, consider that paid advertising. So then you can do an advertising campaign in Google and Facebook. And while there are restrictions for cannabis and dispensaries, there are ways around it. You can actually go in and advertise for a product that helps you with X without specifying or specifically mentioning hemp, marijuana, CBD, weed, whatever it is. So there are ways to do it that we've seen to be very successful. I'm going to pause right now because I know you're thinking of something, Jimmy.
No, I'm not, but I thought of a
good.
question, and then it kind of just went in one ear and out the other, which
all right, good.
Sometimes. But I want you to keep going. You're on a roll, Mike. Keep it going.
Another minute, and you don't have to hear me talk anymore. But so one of the things we do with every new client, any prospect, is we generate an online visibility report. We call it a snapshot report, and we look at these 3 things. Again, their conversion on the website, their search presence, and the awareness that's being generated. And we give a grade across all of these characteristics. So that it's a launching off point for us to engage with any client, to make sure that we're focusing on the things where they really need help. As far as that 5-point checklist I talked about, This is, if you go to my website, which is Roovio, ROOV.io, you can hit the button and get a free consultation. I do a 20-minute run through of these 5 points to make sure that, one, you have an optimized Yelp listing. I often have to say, do you even have a Yelp listing? Because many businesses don't, and they don't realize that, Yelp was just restaurants in the past, but now people are using it to find all sorts of services. You have to make sure you have a good Google My Business listing and optimize that. There's a lot of stuff that you can fill or post in your Google My Business listing, which Google likes to see. Think of it as an SEO booster for you. Social media, we make sure that you've got a Facebook business page, a LinkedIn business page, an Instagram account, most do, a Twitter account, pretty common. But those platforms, not only do you have to have them, but you have to be posting regularly to them, because again, it's like a snowballing effect. As you keep posting, even if you have a low follower count initially, in time, it just snowballs, and it really takes effect when someone with influence, whether they have a blog or they have they're an influencer on YouTube or any other social media platform, they may link to you or to something that you posted in your feed, and that expands, your follower base.
Let me call a time out and ask a quick question about influencers.
Yeah.
Instagram influencers.
Yes.
Let's say you find one in the cannabis space, right? How do you engage them, and do you have to pay them? Is there paid influence?
Yeah, of course there is.
Is it based on a cost per thousand basis, or is it a flat fee? Is it hourly?
Yeah.
How do they come up with the number?
It's all different. It's all based on the person who's running that account. But often you'll hear about, there's a good success case that I read recently. Tommy John Underwear. They sent out underwear to Howard Stern, and Howard Stern talked about it on our show, and it just blew them up. They became well known that way. But same thing. You can go to any if you say like an influencer in the cannabis space, you can send them a sample of product. Or whatever it is you can offer them. They might then mention you, and that's great. But they may come back to you and say, thanks for sending this, but I charge $5,000, to even say anything about, of course, if you're going to someone super big, you may be paying 10 grand, 50 grand, whatever it is. But the point is, it's a case by case basis. And there's a lot you can do without going to the paid route of influencers. So, again, I try to emphasize, get the fundamentals down right before you start trying to jump to the head of the line or take a quick way. Get the fundamentals down, establish your footprint, your online footprint, keep building it, keep adding content to your website. We're going to talk in a future session about SEO. I'll just give you the teaser on that. It's 4 words. They ask, you answer. If someone has a question about the product, put up a page, and it's something you sell or a service you provide, put up a page on your website, a blog post answering that question. Content is so important, and to be in a steady rhythm, just like with social media, steady rhythm of cadence of putting content on your website, then promoting that new content on all your social media channels and your email. Right. That all works a lot. We talked about the website. Go ahead.
I was going to say, somebody's trying to sell me Snoop Dogg as an influencer. Yeah. And I found that interesting. Did not buy, just for the record. But, this is where I think, it's funny, Mike, you and I remember the days when disc jockeys, you come from the music industry, right? They would push a song or a product, and people, because that they had created a following and people liked them and they had influence on their audience, would go out and check out that product. This was before the days of the, the mobile technology, and I'm just going to Google it and find it. And it was the that personal recommendation. Paul Harvey, right? Paul Harvey was famous for this.
Yeah.
You remember Paul Harvey.
Which happened through payola. It wasn't they weren't just talking up a new artist because they liked them that much. Often it was like, hey, we're going to pay the station or pay you to play this disc.
And the pay-to-play model is working in the cannabis space. I just, usually on the podcast side, I know that there are companies out there where you pay to have your podcast aggregated with others, and then they get you advertisements and all this. And there's a lot of that out there. And payola was a nasty word in the music industry for a long time.
Right. So I would just advise start small. Like, again, have the foundation solid, do the online essentials, all this stuff we're talking about. Then start small as far as the paid front, whether it's paid advertising on Google and Facebook or Instagram or wherever. You can even do banner ads across a network of thousands of websites.
Do you still think banner ads are effective?
Oh, they are effective. It depends on what you're selling, what your proposition is.
Right.
If you have a good landing page. The key thing to a banner advertising campaign is having a strong landing page that's going to convert people. If you don't have a good conversion point or a simple, focused landing page, then you're wasting your money on a banner ad campaign. So you want to make sure that you're driving people to a page that's going to get them to do only one thing, and that's either sign up for something or order something. So you don't want to just send them to your home page, in other words, because they can go 100 different ways and get lost. Anyway, that fifth point in the checklist is SEO, which again, that's a whole nother session. I could go into keyword and content research that informs the content you put on your website, and ultimately what you talk about in social media, all again based on keyword research. I'll give you an example. We're working with some CBD clients right now. So that one of the popular searches out there is CBD for pain, CBD for anxiety, CBD for my pets, CBD for dogs. So out of the hundreds of searches you may find of people typing in to search for CBD related information, those are top. And, I have a list of 10, 15, 20 terms like that we kind of focus on now. But the point is, we look at two things there. We look at keyword difficulty, meaning, do I have a chance of showing up on page one? I'm not going to try to compete with, say, a Charlotte's Web. If they're optimizing on a keyword for their website, they're going to own a bunch of slots on page one. If I take a keyword that has a lower keyword difficulty rating, and I combine that with the monthly search volume. I want that monthly search volume to be decent, at least 500, 1,000 searches a month. I want that keyword difficulty to be low. And that's what informs, again, the content that you end up pushing and what you put out in social media, because that's your SEO plan right there. You want to make sure you're going to get ranked and put on page one for terms that are manageable,
And one of the things that is fascinating, and of course it makes perfect sense, is when you have a keyword that is trending, the cost of that keyword goes up, correct? To buy that specific keyword, right?
Yeah, exactly. But always remember, you may see, let's say you started an AdWords campaign and they said, okay, the top spot is $13 a click. Well, if the second person is only spending $3, you're only going to pay $3.01. You're not going to pay that top bid number that you agreed to. So
the days of buying the 6 o'clock commercial on the 3 networks and reaching 90% of the market are way gone, right?
Yeah. All those people still, as you can see in the news today, are buying Super Bowl commercials and doing well with that.
But you know what? We could talk about this. We're sports guys. By the way, is your presentation, are we complete here? Can we go back to gallery?
We are. Yes, absolutely.
Let's go back. Let's go back to gallery here. There we go. Now we're back. I want to ask you, go back to the dispensary discussion. Yeah. And as you know, there are MSOs out there in the cannabis space, multi-state operators. Curaleaf is the biggest one in the world, and they are based in Massachusetts. And, the MSOs, like Big Pharma, are looked at, with not an evil eye, but a cautious eye, if you will, of the consumer, which I think might be a little unfair, but we can get into that another time. But most of the dispensaries in many states are limiting their dispensary licensees to 3 per state. Massachusetts has that, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So when you are a marketing person for a mom and pop dispensary, and let's just make it a non-MSO dispensary, the importance of geo-targeting to that 25-mile area around that dispensary, I'm guessing, is really important. Yes?
Right. Yep.
So go ahead.
And for an MSO that has several locations, you want to treat each one of those independently, so that you're doing all of the things we just talked about for each one of those locations.
So again, geo-targeting for each individual dispensary is probably the most important tool to use in your marketing.
Right. And especially in terms of, like, let's say SEO, we're going to do a local SEO campaign. We're not going to do a national or broad SEO campaign to compete with, say, hemp for anxiety or cannabis for pain. We're going to do cannabis for pain Boston. We're going to tag on that specific location where they are, so that when people are in that area, you're going to show up on page one, because you're optimizing your content and you're focusing your SEO, your link building, everything on that geo.
Right. And of course, what a lot of people don't realize is, this is truly a tracking device, right?
Mm-hmm.
That Google knows everything, and Google knows where you are, where you've been, and where you're at. And, it can also feed you information based on your area. That's pretty much the key here, is that when you go searching for something, they know where you are, so you can find it in your area. It's always asking you, you want to turn on your location notification, right? And,
geofencing.
Right, geofencing. I guess my point is, as a consumer, you can still control that, right?
There are things you can turn on and off in privacy settings, but I'm of the view, I think half the people I talk to agree with me, is that I want them to know as much about me as possible, because if I'm surfing the web, or if I'm searching Google, if I'm doing a search in Google, or if I'm on Amazon, I want ads to be showing me guitars and specific cars. I don't want to be seeing ads for bras. I don't want to see ads for, like, cutlery. I want to see stuff that I am actually interested in.
Wait a second, you're not interested in cutlery? Come on.
I do cook. I love cooking, but I buy a new knife every, like, 5 or 10 years. So it's
How about pans? How about, do you recycle pans? Because I got to get rid of some pans right now.
Yeah, no, sometimes I'm happy to see those ads, because I might have just gone to, I'm going to give a shout out to a great gene company I just discovered called Distilled. It's DSTLD, and great fitting. Anyway, then I started seeing ads for them, and then I think I started seeing ads for their competitors, but I was okay with that. Again, it wasn't for something related to, like, new windows. It's like,
look,
it's going to take up real estate on my screen. Make it topical.
Right. The algorithms that dictate the information that is flooded on all of us when we go searching for a product. It's why after a few days you've searched for, let's say, a grill, right? And over the next few days, you're going to get inundated with grill advertisements, right? I mean, this is really what you see. And when people start hearing about that, they go, oh, I get it. That's what that's how SEO truly works.
Not so much SEO, but the paid advertising, because that's what you would do. Like, you would set up these remarketing lists, and you would target to people who are searching for a specific thing or had visited a certain website. So that's how you're able to, advertise your product in front of those people.
Right. And when you have a variety of both products and services, are there different strategies for either or is it still kind of like basics?
So give me an example, because I'm going to say...
I'm going to talk about being a media company. Gee, what a shock, right? I create content. I create production videos for people. I do interviews for people and with people.
Right.
And yet, my product as a media company are the audience that's tuned into the content. And it's one of the reasons why we're finding the internet now, you have... Literally, you remember it used to be the 60 channel universe and the 600, then the 6 million. Well, we're probably closer to the 6 billion channel audience channels now available to all of us.
Right.
And yet there are still plenty of people who have not cut the cord, the cable cord, right?
Right.
And one of the things I'm finding as I experiment, I pay for both because I'm a glutton for punishment. I've got a smart TV that has Hulu on it and Netflix and Amazon and Apple TV and all that. And then you go upstairs and the other people in my house who are much less savvy, let's just say, much rather just click on the TV and I try to explain to them there's actually an HD tier to go. You don't necessarily have to go back to the old days, but they're comfortable watching whatever they do. And then of course it kicks into the HD anyway. But still, point being is there's the ease of use of finding content. And I think this is really where I'm going with this question next, is if you're on Roku or you're on Apple TV or you're on one of those channels, Netflix even, you have so many choices. You go and you start surfing through those. It's overwhelming, right? So how do you, as a marketing person, how do you explain to people how you're going to find this content on your smart TV? It's not as easy as, 825 or whatever that tier is, 954. We know what, if you're sports fans, we know what ESPN is on just about everything, right?
Right. Well, so now if you have like the newest Roku remote, you can press the button and speak to it and say, find me such and such.
That's right. Here we go. This is the Emmy Award-winning remote by Xfinity, and you can just talk into it, which is...
It looks way more complicated than the simple Roku device that came out. But
so again, go back to how do you get your content found on all these platforms, or is it best to be on all those platforms with your content?
Yes, it's best to be on an example like with a podcast. You don't just want to be on Apple Podcasts or on Breaker. You want to be on Stitcher as well, and the 3 or 4 other major podcast platforms. So
Spotify is number 2, I believe. iTunes is number 1. So those certainly
it's syndication. You want to be across all of these platforms. So why limit yourself?
Right. So let me, kind of what we're doing is we don't just create a podcast. We take an audio video interview, strip the audio to create the podcast.
Put the podcast out, strip out sections of this visually, including my deck, put that up on SlideShare. So you have your deck out on SlideShare. Again, post links throughout social media pointing to your blog post that features the video and a description of the episode. I'm going to share with you my webinar workflow, which is all about pre-promoting a webinar.
Before you go there, I got a follow-up question. And of course I'm going to forget.
And then I have to jump because I've got a
call. Is it pardon, did I date this, but is it at 1:30 or?
It is.
Okay. All right. So we're going to wrap this up, Mike, so you can get to your next call. But I have so many more questions. And more importantly, I hope you'll consider working with us in some capacity as an expert, because you have showcased your expertise in this interview. And I've so enjoyed talking with you. And we didn't even get into sports discussion, which happy to do at any time. Is that fair enough?
Oh, yeah. We'll lead off with that next time.
There you go. Mike Corso from Roove.io, right? I do it right at the end. That's it.
Yes.
That's where you find him. This is In the Weeds with Jimmy Young. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly.
We Talk Now, We Talk News, and In the Weeds are all available on most major podcast distributors like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and our friends at clnsmedia.com and our flagship, Cannabis.net. So subscribe, share, and like our videos on all the social media networks out there, including LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the WeedTube, and YouTube. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are 2 productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.